Oh, day one. Oh, here we are.
Oh.
There we go.
There we are.
All right, so we're not going to scream at you this time. We're not going to beat our chest. We're talking day one of 11 days of reefing.
All right, so this is 52 weeks. We're following the episode format from 52 weeks of reefing. But today, man, we're going to get decades of reefing experience all compacted into just 11 episodes, one every single day until we hit 11. This is tracking that same order as 52 weeks of reefing. And I would say the fastest way to get to the current evolution of the conversation.
Yeah. I mean, we spent last season in Black Friday just kind of bringing you all the way through the history all the way. And now what we're doing is just giving you where we are today.
All right, so here's the big piece, man. We got some, before we dive in, today we got 4 different episodes, I believe. Episode 1 or 2 was unveiling the tank and custom stand.
Yep.
Totally different information on that one. We had sumps, what they do, what you should select, planning a safer tank with redundancy, plumbing, overflows, and return pumps. You can hear about all that stuff. But first, we're going to share some things about, like, if I only had 10 things to tell a new or even like a current reefer, and like, well, we had your attention, I could only get these 10 things, we're going to share what those things are.
Yep.
But you know what? The first part that really came to mind to me when thinking about this is a quote that I read in the Doyle Brunson's book on poker.
The Super Systems?
Yep. It was, winning is the easy part. All you have to do is have the best hand. Not losing is the hard part. Right?
It rings true.
Okay, there's so many areas of life where definitely poker that's true.
Quotes.
Winning's the easy part. But reefing too, I would say look at it this way. I mean, to win at reefing, all I really need to do is throw a tank full of salt water, throw some rock in there, throw some corals and some fish in.
I win.
Day one, man, I won. Yeah.
I'm winning, yeah.
It's every single day after that, I also need to win or not lose.
Not lose, yeah.
This is the piece, I think, that is maybe the most fundamental thing that everybody needs to think about, which is like every single, whatever worked for me yesterday may not work for tomorrow. And I need to stay sharp. I need to keep thinking about the beginning or what's going on to happen at tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because like it could all be taken away from me at any moment.
Instantly.
One bad decision.
Yeah, instantly or slowly, it's all teetering on like this balance.
Yeah, we're gonna get the slow part is actually a good one because often we're in reefing, we're looking for that we did something and then everything died.
Yeah.
But often it's the accumulation of a single bad decision done 100 times.
Till it hits a tipping point and then it's over. Yeah.
So we're gonna learn all about all this stuff, and I think, these episodes might be pretty lengthy, but at the same time, we're taking decades of experiences and probably, like, it took me thousands and thousands of posts on forums, tanks putting up, like out of 15 years of working here, all kinds of different things to be able to get to where we're at.
To like gather and hone that knowledge.
The people that watch this to come will be able to get all of that all condensed into a matter of hours.
Yeah.
Right? 11 episodes.
Yeah. That's exciting. And then I think we'll actually end up breaking it up in the end. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
Cool.
All right. So, by the way, Doyle Brunson has more wisdom than you would have ever thought. We're going to start every one of these episodes with a little bit of Doyle.
Yeah.
So there we go. Also, the biggest thing that we're going to talk about today, or throughout the entire series, is betting on the highest percentage outcome. Not this thing worked for you, this thing worked for me, this thing worked for you, but because anything can work, 1 out of 100 times. But what most people are looking for when they ask these questions aren't absolute. Will it work? Will it not work? Because those things don't exist in reefing.
There is no black and white.
It's just which options will have the highest percentage outcomes to your specific goals. We're going to hit on that as the focus. Everything can work once. We need to get past that. I think again, winning isn't the easy part, not losing the hard part. Doyle Brunson, the spirit of today. So here is the next piece here is that
The 10 things if we only knew.
if only you knew about reefing right now. I'll let you start with the first one.
The core belief?
Yep.
Okay, so the core belief here is that, reefing is more than a toy set up on a whim. We're creating an environment that houses rare and unique pets, probably the most difficult pets to keep or pet ownership. Their survival and growth is the measurement of how good we are at it. So, death not being the answer, the be-all, end-all.
So if you're watching this and you're like, no, man, having a reef tank is just a toy and I don't really care whether or not I kill this stuff, it really is immaterial to me, I'll just go replace it. That's probably the wrong series for you. I don't know, we're not gonna have a lot of information there because it's always cheaper to replace the animals than it is to care for them properly.
Yeah.
So that's not the angle. And if you're really thinking about, in any old hobby, if we were into RC planes, it'd be how many loop-de-loops you could do, right?
Yeah.
In this case, the measurement of success is very much how long can you be successful with this thing? And many people are into it for decades.
Yeah, exactly.
You have a 20-year tank. You can be successful as long as you want to be. So, really, not a whim. It's not a toy. We're creating an environment that houses rare and unique pets. All right. So in that spirit of that's our core value and belief on this one, what do we believe matters most? And I'll give you the first one here.
Okay.
Consider the ROI of reefing and design around that. For me, the return is the challenge of doing something difficult, challenging the status quo, evolving our knowledge set, a bottomless pit of creative energy, and there just happens to be something beautiful and powerful at the other end. Perfecting the environment is the hobby for me, but for you, figure out what it is for you and design your hobby to that thing. If you're into cars, it might be I want to bling it out and have the chrome out alternator.
Yeah.
Another person might just want to have the fastest car known to man. Pick the path.
In a lot of those other hobbies or any really hobby, I think the main ROI or return on investment for anybody is just the joy that hobby brings you.
That is the thing. I read a lot of times when people talk about reefing and I invested in this and I invested in that, and everybody chimes in and says you don't know what the word investment means if you think you're equating it to a reef tank because you're not going to get anything out of it. People invest in joy all over the place.
Oh yeah.
So
where else are those extra dollars going to?
Almost everything you buy is in some manner an investment in joy. Consider that. And so think about this throughout the entire series: is how do you enjoy the hobby most? What brings you the most joy, and invest in those pieces of it. Next one.
Next one is the most successful reefers that you've met, that I've met also, are those that anticipate the inevitable and know what to do when it happens. This is thinking on that. It's almost like the critical thinker, the one you're constantly full of criticism, skepticism. It actually works. In this hobby, for me, I've always questioned and second guessed and questioned everything, but it actually really works here because that leads you to think of, well, what if this? What if my lights go out? What if my salinity changes? What if my pump fails? What if my ATO fails? And then the most successful people in this hobby that I've met, that you've probably met too, are the ones that consider that and then do something about it. So they know, so they have a plan when that happens, because it is inevitable.
It's kind of like that sentence or thought process of I'm going to let life happen to me, or I'm going to happen to life. Yeah. And so, if you anticipate the inevitable, and everything breaks on the tank, almost all of it can be anticipated at this point. And if you watch this series, you'll be able to anticipate every last thing that could happen to your tank. You'll also know instantly what to do and how to prevent it from the first place.
Yeah, and that is, that's a gem of knowledge that will lead you, catapult you into the stratosphere as far as how long you're going to be in this hobby.
Totally change the trajectory.
Yeah.
The long-term trajectory. Okay, another one is emulating others' successful paths has the highest percentage success. Find a mentor and listen to someone rather than everyone.
We've heard this. This is kind of one that has been around now for, I think, a couple of years. We've been saying that ever since your speech over at Reefapalooza. It was like, stop listening to everyone, because that's how we came up. Reading the forums, reading books, learning on your own. I had the benefit of YouTube by then, but you start to listen to every single person's opinion out there, and you just get lost.
And none of them share your needs. They're just kind of telling you whatever works for them.
Yeah.
You know, and in the collage with missing the details and parts of the journey. And so when I say listen to someone, it can be, play people like Randy and I. We share a lot of information. We share journeys on tanks. But most valuable is if you can find like an actual person in your life.
Yeah.
So, if somebody
who
has
the time.
Store,
somebody who can actually give you the attention one-on-one.
A buddy, whatever that happens to be a little farther than you down the road. But whatever it is like emulating other successful paths have way higher success rates than just kind of building your own.
That brings up something else that we usually, it follows in tow with that concept of listening to someone rather than anyone, and that is listening to someone who is ahead of you in your path. I don't know if I want to listen to the same guy who has the same exact questions as me, because then we're just the blind leading the blind.
It's true. I mean, I've said this before many times, but if I was sitting in university, I'd know exactly who I should listen to, because twice as old as me,
there.
he's wearing a suit or she's wearing a suit up front.
Yep.
I wouldn't ask the person next to me to teach me.
Yeah.
And so I think of it as like there are mentors, and then there's various grades of peers. So really advanced reefers or even intermediate reefers gone through a lot, you can actually use your peer to create new ideas, but they won't be proven paths. You're just kind of challenge each other's thought and you're evolving it together. But if you're brand new, listening to other people that haven't done this before and asking the exact same questions as you, and we tend to kind of just regurgitate whatever thing that you heard yesterday as the right answer.
It might not even be something you practice. It might just be something you heard.
In fact, most of the time, if you read a thread and you ask a question, there's 30 answers. 3 of them are from somebody you really should listen to, and 27 are somebody, it's your peers going through the exact same thing as you at the moment. So that is one of the core things. You really want to be successful, find somebody to listen to.
I like this next one. A good water change schedule is an incredible substitute for skill. There was a time where we went down that path of exploring the non-water change whole vibe.
A lot of skill, though.
Yeah, and there was a lot of skill involved to kind of follow that path. But if you kind of want to skip all that, do water changes.
You could have the crummiest gear. You could have the crummiest, of all kinds of, bad chemistry solutions that are, or I shouldn't say bad, but less than perfect chemistry solutions. And all of it is nullified if you're willing to do consistent water changes. And the people that do consistent water changes have the highest percentage paths to success, especially in the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
So I would really, and it's noted here that it's it's not that the water changes have to happen in all cases, it's that it is an incredible substitute for skill.
It's not very. It doesn't take a lot of skill to do a water change. I mean, mix up my salt water to the right salinity, and bring it up to temp if I'm doing a big one, and then bad water out, in with the good water. That was easy.
All right. So here's the next one too. Is what we believe matters most here. Challenges happen to us all. It's how you get past them that defines you and your journey. At some point in time, you will run into ick, you'll run into dinos, you'll run into a flooded floor, you'll run into a leaky tank, you'll run into a skimmer that's overflowing, you'll run into 8 million things, probably all of them at some point in time. It's how do you manage those things that defines you and how successful you will be from there. because it's really easy to get down. I mean, at one point, this tank was just filled with Aptasia.
Oh gosh,
right?
we thought we'd never get over it.
No, it's like it's close to shut it down, man.
Yeah.
But you throw your effort, you throw some time at it, you turn the whole thing around. And we did it also in the 750.
Same
man,
thing.
Aptasia just exploded.
Worth. Yeah. Oh, it was a year battle. It was almost a year battle with this. It was just at a year battle on the 750. But even us who've been doing it for a while run into challenges to the day.
Part of it is knowing that it is possible to beat it and how. So when we run into the challenges, knowing what to expect and what to do.
Yeah.
Because if you told me I needed to go beat the Aptasia and you said I should do it in the next 60 days, I'm going to be really disappointed and I'm going to feel like a big loser that I wasn't able to conquer this challenge.
Yeah.
But if I said, hey, just don't let the Aptasia bother you, we'll implement this strategy, and this time next year, this won't be your problem. And on top of that, you'll have great pride because you will have conquered a challenge that very, very few people have.
Yeah, I think that that goes back to this. The successful reefers are the ones who anticipate the inevitable. Part of anticipating the inevitable is having that mindset of your expectations. When you get Aptasia, you shouldn't expect to, like, when you run into these challenges and these hurdles through the hobby, a lot of people's expectation is, I want to kill it and I want to solve it, I want it done now. Well, if you temper some of that expectation, be like, it's okay for this to take it's a journey to get out of. Then at the other end, it feels more rewarding when you come over that hurdle. You're like, I didn't expect to kill it, to beat it in a month. It didn't take me a month. It took me, like we said, 750 took a year to get the Aptasia problem under control. But at the other end, we're like, man, look at this tank now.
It wasn't a year of hard work. It was just mostly do the right things and have some patience.
Yeah. But if you set those expectations, and you're not going to disappoint yourself.
All right. So the next 5 are what we'll call hard lessons that we'd like to avoid in the future. And these are this case I got 6 actually, but there are 6 things, man, I would love for everybody out there to avoid. Beginners, intermediates, whatever. Share this information with other people. You share.
All right, first one is hard lessons I would like to avoid. Choose your own adventure or piecemeal reefing has low percentage outcome. It's characterized by unsystematic partial measures.
Yes. So piecemeal reefing, meaning like I decided I want a reef tank, I'll go search perfect protein skimmer, perfect calcium solution, perfect lighting solution, perfect flow solution, perfect sand solution, and then I'll try to piece it all together. It's very similar to making cookies and deciding, well, I need chocolate chips, flour, whatever. But like, I didn't know how much of the baking soda to use, or maybe I just left it out because somebody told me I didn't need to manage that thing or whatever it is. And I make a pretty crappy cookie. And I think the best analogy that you have seen us learn in real time, and we called them tank trials for a reason. The WWC tank trial and the ULM tank trials is because we were doing just that. We were taking a recipe that works for WWC in a commercial environment that has employees that are taking care of these things all day long. What works there, and then we're going to move it over to here. And only the subtlest difference actually made the change, which was in their environment, they have thousands of pounds of live rock that are sitting in these bins just waiting to be used for tanks like this. And when we started dry rock bare bottom, we missed that one piece of the recipe, and it was kind of piecemeal recipe, right? And we had the same problems with the ULMs, where we found out that the bare bottom dry rock solution was really challenging. And it's because we were taking a bunch of thoughts, and you were watching us in real time, plug it out. And
logically and methodically in our head, like, that should work. We justified every decision on those, thinking, that makes complete total sense.
And the nature of those two things was, let's go find the next frontier, right? Whereas with the 160 here, it was, let's just take everything that we know and the most successful things for the ways that we do it and turn it into an actual path, right? Well, it produced that type of result.
I mean, here it is today.
And so, think about that, the piecemeal reefing. it really ties again into emulating somebody or a path or a recipe of some kind. Okay, the next one here of lessons I'd avoid in the future, and we kind of hit on this one I think already, but almost every action we take in the tank is based on someone's advice, whether or not we sought it out, researched it, or they actually just told us. Be wary of advice coming from those who cannot show you the fruits of their success. Thank you, Greg Carroll. Unwilling to show failures or recommend products and solutions that are good for them rather than you.
This is really good.
Yeah. So think about like the sources of advice that you're getting from, because if that person can't show you, if they don't, there's like a lot of theoretical knowledge, and then there's a knowledge of application and actually doing it.
Yeah.
If that person doesn't maintain a reef tank, just think about how you want to apply their knowledge, because it's different than a knowledge from somebody who's actually achieved the goal that you want, not just has some knowledge that you want.
I like the second part a little bit more than the first one. So, don't be wary of the advice that comes from people who can't show you the fruits of their success. In this hobby, it's really easy to see the fruits of success and identify those people, because it's a visual thing, and people are sharing their awesome tanks all the time. People are sharing like how fat and happy their fish are, and look at all this awesome stuff. So you see the fruits of success a lot. What you don't see or hardly ever see, I can't imagine like that handful of threads or whatnot I've seen that are the failures. Like, guys, look at this massive failure I did. Like, if more people were to do that, we'd probably, the success of everybody would go up if you just showed how you made mistakes.
How you fail. One of the most popular shares we have is how we fail.
Yeah, the mistakes episodes that we have, some of the most popular.
So I'm going to tell you, though, it's hard. And this is the reason why you don't see very many people tell you when their advice sucks and when they failed, right? And like, they don't come out and say, "Hey, I messed up."
Yeah, it didn't work.
And it's because it's embarrassing, man. And
there's a status attached to success. There's and you feel like you're chipped off of that status ladder when you're showing failures.
Yeah, and like but
it happens to everybody. That's the problem. Like, everybody fails.
I'm gonna just speak from my heart about myself, which is like, when I fail, there's not any single part of me that really wants to expose that to all of you, but I do it anyway because it's the right thing.
It's hard.
There's not any part of me that publicly wants to come out and say, "Let's
Screwed
the
up,
dumb
guys."
thing I did." But if I share that, other people will learn from it and not have to go through the same, hard path that I went through.
Yeah.
And so when you're looking for people that give you that advice, man, and you're looking for people when you ask a question and they tell you like the best way to do something, look for, like, has this person ever shown any humility? Because if they haven't, it puts their advice at question for me.
That's a really good one.
And the last part is the recommended products. And this is like I would call it like a plague within our hobby, which is when I ask somebody the best thing, in vast majority of cases, nobody's actually asking you what the best thing is for you.
Yeah.
Which you may have a budget that dictates this. You may have a specific desire for mounting,
space,
there's tank type.
So many variables that go in there. But how many people do you hear one is the question being asked is probably the wrong question. What is the best? Because that inherently puts everybody at algae turf scrubber or a Cato reactor or refugium, and then fight and bicker. But nobody's asking like, well, what are your requirements?
I don't really like the word best very often.
Yeah.
We'll use it here on some of these things, but like, what I'd rather ask is like, what are some really good options for this thing? If I ask you the best light, it kind of instinctively goes to the most expensive stuff or purchase defense.
Or what I bought.
Because it's hard, it's human nature, because you spent the last 6 months researching the perfect lighting solution. So once you install it and it costs you a bunch of money, when somebody asks, it's really hard to not just regurgitate, the research that you did. But if you look at that person and see, they have some needs that are different than mine.
Yeah.
they're having LPS
Different skill
tanks
sets.
or LPS corals in there, not SPS or softies, or they're just because I bought a bunch of XR 30 radions
doesn't mean it's your best for
I
you.
want to put zoanthids in this tank. That's not really the most cost-effective solution.
Yeah.
I mean, at minimum, you should go down to the 15. You should maybe even consider the prime. It's a total different path. But if I was sitting there saying, "Oh, AI Prime's the one for me," but like if your goal was wall-to-wall SPS, dream tank, tank of the month. A couple of AI primes probably ain't the solution either. So best is a different thing,
Yeah.
And quite frankly, you can look at somebody and say, oh, well, that guy drives a Ferrari. Maybe cost isn't that person's issue. I don't know. It's just like now it's just like the best. Think of infinite budget as the best. It's a different thing, So think about that.
Us.
Next one.
Next one, hard lessons to avoid in the future. I can't wait until this one actually holds for everybody. Not dead is not the goal. So, hey, my fish are still alive and kicking, or my coral, the little piece of it is still alive, and that's still success to me. There's more to it than death being the bar.
Like the only threshold is I've essentially poured arsenic in the tank and stuff died. That's the definition of like doing a good job in this case.
Yeah.
Like you think about it like your dog or cat, and there's like, $1.99 food that has got wheat and soybeans and modified cornstarch as the first ingredients.
It'll keep them alive.
Yeah, I don't know. My cat lived on Meow Mix and Purina, for 10 years. But I've also had cats that lived 20 years.
Yeah.
Right? And they were healthier and they didn't have joint problems and stuff. And like nutrition and caring for them was more than that. And if we think about it like with the fish, you'll have the same type of result. If you think about not just the nutrition, but the habitat, the quality of the water, if you think about all of these things, not dead, that whatever I did wasn't so toxic that it just killed everything immediately. That was like 2 decades ago goal. When we could barely keep the stuff alive. That is not today.
Yeah.
So the next evolution is definitely not dead, not the goal. All right, the next one here. This one's kind of double-edged sword for me, but hard lessons to avoid in the future. Trailblazers get shot in the back more than those who follow after, right? And so, I don't know, I'm a natural-born trailblazer, so I get shot in the back all the time.
It's happened a few times around here.
I want to be first down the path. I want to learn something new. I want to get excited about what I'm learning. I want to share it. I know the whole biome testing that we're doing here, I should probably just wait for the whole episode to be done. But if you guys were standing here with me, I'd want to drag you down there and show you what we're learning.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, let's just do it.
Yeah. What are we waiting for? The good thing, it's easy for us to be trailblazers here too, is because of the resources and everything that we have that other people don't. What we're able to try and test for the community, and then share the results with the community. Whether it's good or bad, puts us in a good position to be a trailblazer. But there's opportunities for trailblazers all over, and whole new products come out.
Yeah, so I shared earlier here the ROI of this whole thing, and I shared with me that for me, it's the challenge of doing something difficult, changing the status quo, evolving our knowledge, a bottomless pit of creative energy. There just happens something beautiful and powerful at the end, which to me means part of my joy from this will be trailblazing. But I also have to understand, with going to lands that nobody's gone to before, trying new things, I'm going to fail more often than other people.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so for you, if your goal actually isn't to find new lands, it's just to have a beautiful, epic tank in your house, consider avoiding the trailblazing paths.
Yeah.
That may come later on in the hobby for you. But really soak that in and decide where the ROI is of this for. Is it just a beautiful tank? That's the return on the investment that I get. Or is it, I find joy in trailblazing?
I find joy in failure. That's where we learn all of our best stuff.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I find
I mean,
that,
I enjoy
screwing it
taking
up.
the brave decisions that may not go the way that we wanted,
Yeah.
as long as we learn something from it and move forward and evolve.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't hang out in the past. All right.
Next one.
Next one here is a 5-year tank and a 1-year tank are not the same, and mentors that you're listening to should embrace that. Like there is absolutely a massive difference between how I treat and care for my 1-year tank with a little bit of frags and whatnot versus my 5-year fully grown out tank. And what worked back then absolutely will not work the same today.
So this is really important to think about when you give advice to other people, that where they are versus where you're at. And the one that always comes to mind is people who come out and say, I don't do water changes, look at my beautiful tank. And the reality is their tank actually does look beautiful.
Yeah, it does.
And it looks like a path to success, right?
What we're not considering is the age.
That was the destination, not the journey.
Yeah.
That person didn't start that way.
Nope.
Vast majority of
We
cases.
tried it. We tried starting that way and it didn't work.
Low percentage
Very
outcome.
low,
So
yeah.
it could happen.
You could do it.
It's just a low percentage outcome. Almost anybody you ask said, if I didn't do any water changes from day one, how would my tank look in a year? Low percentage outcome to what you would want.
And
right?
yeah, and the whole point of this series that we're talking about is finding those highest percentage outcomes in paths.
So, however, 5 years from now, where the corals are actually your primary pollutant, sink in the tank, actually suck all this stuff up, it's actually more stable. It doesn't have the same issues, and some people are successful with no water changes. If I had to, bet the farm here, I would say that it's a much higher percentage at any point for the people that do water changes to be successful, but I will openly acknowledge that some people are able to pull it off without.
Agree.
But think about where you are and at any specific point when you're talking about it, because the 5-year tank and 1-year tank, the things you do are not the same. They need to evolve in a direction. Okay, this is another hard lesson that this one's actually really hard to see. I don't know how to give you advice on how to identify this, but other than to know to look for it. It's the failures are rarely around to share why they failed. Right? And so all the advice that somebody's pouring out into the universe, once that advice turns south on them and they're no longer, they just poof out of existence.
I stopped giving advice.
You don't get to hear that it failed.
Yeah.
You don't ever get to see them. And so all this kind of really left is all of the partial successes.
Yeah.
It's all of those people that are currently winning and just haven't lost yet. Winning's the easy part.
Winning's the easy part.
Not losing is the hard part. All right. So what's next?
All right, so next is the episode 2 of the 52 Weeks of Reefing. This is where we're now going to break down each one with the core beliefs and what matters most and that hard lessons we learned, similar to what we just went over. Episode 2 of the 52 Weeks was unveiling the tank and custom-built stand. So for this section, we're talking to our core beliefs about the tank and stand.
All right, core belief about selecting a tank, a stand, deciding where you're going to put it, how big it is, what shape it is. This is the core belief that I would wrap every decision around.
Decades worth of knowledge right up front. Here's where we are today.
Selecting the right tank, size, and location will define your success. Okay, these are the reasons why.
Wow,
right?
That's just your tank and stand selection.
Just the tank, the stand, and where you put it will define your success. And we have some what we believe matters most, but I'm just going to elaborate a little bit on it first.
Yeah.
Meaning, like if you put the tank in a place that you never see it, it will probably not do very well. If you get it in a size that's too small, that doesn't match your lifestyle to maintain a really volatile tank, well, that probably won't work out for you. If you get too big that I don't actually want to maintain it, that probably won't work out for you. If you build it in a style that like you know,
Like-
you felt pressured into or something, and you just really wanted a reef tank, but a fish tank made more sense. All of these things will define the success. So the biggest pressure I see people have is bigger, go bigger.
Yeah.
That's the definition of success.
You'll have more success
Be
the bigger
part
you
of the
have.
500 club or
Yeah.
whatever it is. So
I couldn't do that because I couldn't keep up with it personally.
well, and some of the things happens is like a 500-gallon tank. The only place it can go in is a basement. If you don't spend any time in your basement right now, you won't in the future either. It's like, you know what it's like? It's like a gym membership.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like if you're not working out right now, my buddy actually said this a while back. He's like, go do sit-ups and pull-ups for a month. And if you do that successfully for a month, then go get the membership. If you don't, just save yourself the damn money, right? In this case too, like go spend a month in your basement. If you don't already spend time down there, and if you get to the other side, then put the tank down.
Put the tank down there.
But like the reality is put it somewhere that you're going to enjoy. So think about the size, the shape. Think about like even the style of it. I mean, if you're just kind of testing this out and you get, you know, like a tank and stand that doesn't really match the decor of your home, you're going to be unhappy with that too, which means you're going to reset it up. It's going to cost more. It's going to be a big giant pain in the butt. So,
all right.
Core belief. Selecting the right tank size location will define your success. These are some things that matter most.
So some bullets that matter the most. One of the first ones, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, but here it really rings true. Put it somewhere where you will enjoy it. Putting your tank somewhere where you enjoy it will have the highest return on investment or ROI. And this is what we're talking about. Return on investment here is joy.
All right, I'm gonna give you a personal experience I just had.
You just had.
Yeah. So in my house, I was putting in a big tank. I felt like I was just kind of beyond another 120-gallon tank. Like I've done enough of these things, right? And so I'm building a new house, or the house is already built rather, but I'm building a new tank in it, and the main floor just doesn't have a place for a 200-gallon plus tank in it. So it has to go downstairs. Well, the downstairs is actually nice, so I thought that we would use it more. But the reality is we just don't use it that often.
Yeah.
My experience with the tank is actually now, I don't really get to sit there and enjoy it. It's just more labor is really all it is.
Yeah.
Right?
And you have to make a physical effort to go downstairs to actually watch the tank and enjoy it and maintain it and stuff like that. It's not. It's out of sight and out of mind.
So if it wasn't for a YouTube channel and trying to please everybody in the universe, I would have been way happier with a 120-gallon tank upstairs by the kitchen table.
Yeah.
I'd be able to see it, or by the TV or whatever. I'd be able to just sit there and enjoy it and, you know, see the fish with my family. And it'd be way more successful simply because I'm getting the return on investment, which is joy in this case of looking at it. And I can tell you that, and one of the things that really, I don't know how I missed this, but I now have the 360 in my office, and it doesn't even recoil in it. It just has a fish, but I already enjoy it more.
Yeah, more joyful.
Because I can just look up from my desk at any moment in time and see all my fish. Every time I come in and out of the door, they come to greet me. You know, they're interested in me. Maybe they're just hungry. I don't know. But in my mind, they like me.
You're guaranteed to be here. You're guaranteed to walk by that thing. You're guaranteed to sit next to it for multiple hours a day. Like that.
8-9 hours a day, I get to enjoy it.
It makes sense.
There's nowhere in my life that I get to enjoy the tank more than in my office at work.
Yeah.
Like, so this is such an obvious place for this thing to be.
Should have done it from the get-go.
Yeah, I don't think I'll ever have a work environment that doesn't have a reef tank now, because it is the place that I enjoy it the most.
Yeah, and that speaks directly to the core belief we just said. Having the location defining the success. Would you call it a success that you set it up in your house and a year later took it down? That's not success.
Yeah, I didn't like it there.
Yeah.
I didn't use it. I didn't get to enjoy it. And it's the complete opposite now.
The chances of success now where it is skyrocketed, higher percentage.
Wait, well, dude, it's gonna be awesome. All right, so another one is this is interesting. I think when we're trying to make some like pretty distinct counsel, like if, my grandmother asked me, rest in peace,
Yeah.
if she said, Ryan, I trust you, what would you tell me to do?
Which tank should I get?
I'd say bigger is better for people who are on frequent vacations and away for weekends. So here I'm away for weekends, so bigger is better. And that's all related to that chemistry piece of things go wrong slower in a large system volume.
Right.
So if I got a big old tank, I can leave for a prolonged period of time with an auto feeder, and really nothing kind of ever goes wrong with it. You throw a little webcam on it or something, and a monitor of some type. If you're not going to be around all the time, or you disappear for 4 or 5 days at a time all the time, bigger is better.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no question.
The opposite of that is smaller is better for people who are time limited.
Yeah, so if you're time limited, going big has some advantages, but not if you don't have time to clean the glass, you don't have time to do the water, you don't have time to clean out all the filters. A small little 20-gallon Nuvo or an E170 or all that kind of stuff that's in that range, those things are so simple to take care of. A 20% water change is a single bucket of water.
Yeah,
man.
5-gallon bucket and I'm done.
Yeah, mix it up, done,
Easy peasy.
dude.
Yeah. And you could still get the same amount of joy from that little tank that fits your life, that fits your style, that somebody could who has the big giant tank, but that fits their life and their style.
So this is that piece about looking for advice that fits your specific need here. And so it's not just bigger tanks are always better, smaller tanks are always harder. No, man, the smaller tank, as long as you've got meticulous attention to detail and you actually do the work, there's less work to do.
Yeah.
So the smaller tank, if you let it, go to crap, it'll do it a lot faster.
Yeah.
But you don't get as much leeway.
But your time spent maintaining it and keeping it up is a fraction.
Well, I would say these things are going to continue to tie together. I would say that on a smaller tank, the skill level is higher because I need to do things right. But at the same time, water change is the ultimate replacement for
As
skill.
we said earlier.
All right. Large fish tanks, fish-only tanks, the best option for somebody who wants minimal work and gone a lot. So if you want both, I go on vacations. I don't want this thing to suck up my life, and I think that a large fish only with live rock tank is probably the best option because they're super easy to maintain. Chemistry doesn't get sucked up by all the corals. The lighting generally doesn't have to be as bright, so you're not, throwing dinos. You're not getting cyano. You're not getting algae the same way.
Yeah.
There's so many reasons why a fish only or fish only with live rock or even I guess the coral inserts.
Oh yeah.
That tank may bring you more joy because it matches your lifestyle, and again, the right answer for you based on your ROI.
What we believe matters most for tank and stand here is an all-in-one makes things so simple, so simple. Yeah. I've had 40 breeders with hang-on equipment. I've had 60-gallon tank with the whole accoutrement, sump, and everything down below. But when I got here to the office and got my first Nuvo 40, I was like, this thing is easy.
No plumbing, no immense of gear hanging off the back.
And AIO, naturally means less gear, smaller gear. Less I have to buy, less I have to do for water changes. Like we said, an AIO, even a large AIO, 2 buckets a week, and I'm done.
Okay, so this is actually a good example. It keeps fitting together. The E170 that everybody has probably seen. That thing, is a mediocre skimmer, no real filtration, just BRS 2-part, and
auto water change.
The Tropic Marin, the A and K going on it, and good water change schedule. Good water change and I don't have any of the plumbing. I don't have all of the leak problems. I don't have like an infinite amount of gear to buy.
Yeah.
If I had to give the best advice to a newer reefer that like was just getting their feet wet, not really looking for the end game forever tank.
Right.
All-in-one is the easiest way to have your first successes. And all-in-ones were kind of like shamed on. The skimmer's not good enough, blah, 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 all that stuff.
You don't need it.
Disagree.
I would run another all-in-one system, and I wouldn't put a skimmer on it. I wouldn't put filter socks on it because I have to change them. I wouldn't do anything other than just water changes to this thing and supplement, with my like the E170. But I think not only is it a good starter tank in that I don't have to. You know how many times we say. Buy your gear once and then nobody listens to it and you end up buying 3 or 4 skimmers, you end up buying more lights, you end up buying this other thing. And all-in-one, I can buy my light once because it's the light that fits that size. I don't have to go buy a whole bunch of equipment and try it out and then I got the wrong one, I need to upgrade. It just makes even buying things simple.
Absolutely. In relation to buying things, here's another what we believe matters most. Create a budget for the tank and the stand. Start there. Right?
Budget.
Create a budget for it. And this is kind of what I would say is the tank is furniture and it's also a piece of art in the room.
Yeah.
And so a good rule of thumb is the tank and stand will cost as much as the furniture that it's sitting next to.
Yep.
So just look around your room, whatever that is, it's probably about the right budget for the tank and stand so that it matches whatever else is in the room, right?
Some people have thousands of dollars in furniture and some people have hundreds of dollars in furniture.
Yeah, I mean, it just hit me at different points in my life, absolutely. My first tank was a 90 and I think I spent probably about $1,500 on the tank and the stand, right? And here's the thing is like a lot of this stuff is, not cheap, right? So don't go way over your budget. And also, like, feel comfortable and, like, thinking about the ROI, what am I going to get out of it? Like, what did I get out of that armoire that's sitting over in the corner? I don't know. But this is going to give me more. So, all right. And the next one.
Another one that we believe matters most is decide on the overflow for you.
So, when you're picking a tank, the overflow has...
We're talking inside the tank?
There's a few of them, right? Yeah. You have this, I think there's 3 styles I can think of.
Reef ready, like corners, right?
Yep.
The box on the inside, and then there's no box at all.
There's like the ghost overflow on the outside, right? And people call them a lot of different things now, but... think about what you want. I will just say, if you want to butt your tank right up against the wall and it needs to be flush with the wall, well, the overflows need to be inside.
Yes.
With the one exception of the Red Sea Maxes.
Yeah, the Maxes.
Where they essentially have a little box on the back.
Yeah, it's not an all-in-one because it has a sump and everything, but it has a little box chamber so you can actually shove this thing flat against the wall.
Yeah, so with the Red Sea Max bigger tanks, you have essentially a flat wall across the back and then it'll go in. All right, so that's the advantage. So for everybody else who doesn't really care if the tank is flush with the wall, you get an external overflow, which is like now those boxes that hang off the back, you know, and it's a smooth back. And what you get with the smooth back
on the inside
is, in the inside of the tank, instead of having these big overflow towers, is my aquascape doesn't have to build around it, which is a big deal. When the thing pops out 5 inches, it really is going to change the way that I'm gonna do this. It also doesn't allow me to have flow going across the back because there's a big block in the middle of it. There's no way to do it. And on the corners, I can no longer put pumps even on the corners.
Yeah.
So for me, I would never, ever, ever want an overflow in the tank if I didn't have to have it. And I don't really care about it being all the way up against the wall, and I can build my own little wood things or something to hide it if I needed to.
I'd actually prefer it to be off the wall because there's so many things that salt creep, water against my wall, or piece of equipment falls back there, and then I'm screwed because it's up against the wall. But if I have about 2 inches of space, not only can I fit like drivers or power head backs back there, I can also get things if something were to go bad.
So at one point I would have told you that, like, if you were going to get the Reef Savvy tank, right, and that goes overflow, well, that's like an expensive option that most people aren't going to go for. And so you would be kind of end up with like these marine land things or aquariums with the towers inside.
Yep.
And so you're kind of like, dictated by budget. But I'll actually tell you the opposite now, which is you can actually get a cheaper tank that's just a glass box. Go drill those 2 holes for yourself, and then put on like one of the eShops ones. Fiji Cube has them.
Yep.
I think there's a couple of different places on our site that have them, but then you can just put your own overflow on it, and it's actually cheaper than the corner overflows. And drilling the glass, some people might be watching right now, like, oh, I don't want to do that. Like, go watch the video on it, man, because
get a practice tank and try it yourself.
Yeah, like one of the hard lessons I learned early on was I bought 110 and then I went and had it drilled. I had left it there for a week. I had 2 guys help me load it, unload it, whatever. And then when I went over to a friend's house and drilled one, I'm like, what? This is so easy. What a giant waste of money and time.
You paid and you waited, yeah.
Yeah, so don't let that hold you back. So, think about all of those things. All right, so.
Hard lessons learned about tanks and stands.
Hard lessons learned, tank and stand, stuff that you don't have to learn the hard way. Go ahead.
First one, like we hit on, out of sight, out of mind. This one hit specifically for you. It hit for me too in the fact that when I had multiple tanks, I had this 125 display upstairs. And then I got, I got to scratch that itch, caught the multiple tank bug. So I was like, downstairs, basement. I'll add 3 more tanks down there. Guess what happened? I hardly went down there, barely took care of them.
Yeah, it's
out of sight, out of mind.
It's real. The best cared tank that I actually had 2 that I've cared for the best. One of them was in my bedroom, and one of them was in the living room. And it's because I saw it all the time. I enjoyed it, and when it looked like crap, I cleaned it.
Yeah,
it was in my living room.
You walk by, you look, and you go, dang.
Yeah.
It take 2 seconds.
And actually, the one that was in the bedroom was actually in my office downstairs, where I actually used that office a lot because I was like an editing suite.
Yeah.
Right? And so, out of sight, out of mind. It's part of the ROI equation. If it's out of sight, you don't actually get to see it because the way you appreciate these things is with your eyes. And B, it'll probably turn to crap, and that doesn't mean every case. It means highest percentage or lowest percentage pass are probably associated with out of sight, out of mind.
Yep.
Right.
Common theme there.
All right, another hard lessons with tanks and stands. Taller than deep is bad, right? So if the tank is taller than it is deep front to back, aquascaping is really, really hard. Keeping the rock off the glass in the back is really hard.
Maintenance, everything,
and
a lot of it.
For those who don't know, the way that water works too, when you look at it, it looks roughly a third less deep than it really is. So if it's 2 feet deep, or if it's 3 feet deep, it will actually only look like 2. So if I get down to 18 inches, it really only looks like 12, the way that your eye works. So taller than deep for a reef tank, I don't know about for fish only, but for a reef tank, generally, not anything I would ever recommend to anyone.
You can actually see this, in like what we have here. So consider the 40 breeder, a 60 gallon, 120, 180, or a custom like 2/3 rule. When I set up my 40 breeder, that is 36 inches long, 18 inches deep front to back, and then only 12 inches or 14 inches tall or whatever. I forget.
It's just slightly deeper.
It's slightly deeper, but that and a 60 gallon, I've had them both, looked way better dimensionally and proportionally than my 6 foot 125 that was really narrow front to back, but super 6 feet long and taller than it was front to back. Yeah, there's something weird about those dimensions, but when you see the proper that 2/3 rule that we're talking about here, that man, there's just something about it that is appealing.
makes for better aquascapes.
Yeah.
It makes for better swim patterns. It makes for better for virtually everything that cares for the animal that's inside of it and how we perceive it. And so 40 breeder for a small tank, cheap,
solid,
awesome, right?
Yep.
Outside of that, 60, 120, 180, which is basically a 2-foot cube, 2-foot cubes stacked together, 3 2-foot cubes stacked together. They're all as deep as they are tall. And the reason I recommend those is because they're off the shelf and they're inexpensive.
Yeah.
If I was going to build something custom, in every case, it would be roughly 2/3 as tall as it is deep. Like so, the Reef Savvy tank that we were giving away.
For the gift away?
Yeah, for the gift away. That thing was, I think, 22 inches tall by 9 inches deep.
Yeah.
Right? And it allowed for a really, really cool aquascape in it. And if you're going to build custom, at least explore the 2/3 rule of being 2/3 as tall as it is deep front to back.
It looks better. I guarantee it looks better.
I don't know why more places don't sell this thing. And it might be because there aren't enough people giving this counsel or showing why it actually is so much better.
We should. I wonder if it's hard to document on camera to actually show that feel, that difference. So I had a 55-gallon tank, a standard 55, like super skinny, way tall, and like 3 feet long, and I could not get it to look like a decent looking tank.
I've now built in recent history 2 pretty elaborate aquascapes for a 120, which is the exact same height as tall, or depth as tall, and it was really hard to get the height, get that kind of front to back, depth
Fill the
feeling
space,
of it. And then when I built the most recent one, which is 29 inches deep, all of a sudden the scape just kind of sprawled, and it was so much cooler and easier. So take that advice. Another hard lesson that I would like to avoid in the future is consider your wood floors when you're placing your tank and where you're going to put it.
I mean, if there's not one thing that damages wood floors quicker, it's water, and even worse, salt water.
So I will just say I've never lived in a house where the dogs I had didn't destroy the floors too, or other pets, so it might just be part of the whole thing, and you can always refinish them or whatever in many cases. But I will say that if you don't put any thought into it at all, expect the saltwater tank to ruin the wood floors around it, because it is going to drip off your hand.
It's inevitable.
You're not going to rinse it off perfectly, and the salt is going to corrode the finish. And so you could install tile down there. It's possible, I've never done anything like this, but it's possible you could put some kind of waterproof barrier, like some rubber, and then cover it with a nice decorative rug or something. So if the rug gets wet, at least it's not going through the rubber and going onto your floor. Just put some thought into, if the place that this is going into is a wood floor, just a little bit of thought as to how do I protect the floor as well. Because or is there a better place that isn't wood?
That doesn't have wood.
There you go.
Another hard lesson we learned is going big just for the sake of going big. I'm pretty sure I fell into this trap, although a 125 is not a massive leap from like what I was able to do with a 40 breeder, but I could not see myself in a 500 just because it's 500 and I want to be at the 500 club. Don't go big just for the sake of going big. There's a lot to think about, a lot to consider, a lot of extra cost.
The cost, man. One of them is if this is going to be a reef tank, it's super expensive to fill with coral.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
man.
Yeah, I mean, coral is only getting more expensive as well. And so if I had a 4-foot tank versus an 8-foot tank, it's going to cost twice as much to fill with coral. So there's cost there. There's cost of
lighting,
every piece of equipment is bigger. And that was actually one of the things when I got a 90, somebody told me afterward, hey, dude, you should have gotten, and that was one of those ones that's taller than deep. And I regretted it big time. But they told me afterward, man, that you just didn't have to do it that way. And so, I don't know, man. I just think that you should consider doing the when you're picking a size of a tank, don't go big just for the sake of going big. Think about how much money you're going to put into all that equipment. Oh, and the 90 actually, it was that if I go to 120, the only cost of difference was like the cost of the tank.
What was the cost of the tank?
The lights are going to be roughly the
Same,
same.
yeah.
The skimmer's going to be roughly the same. The stand's probably going to be roughly the same.
Both 4-foot tanks.
Some's going to be roughly the same. It was like, is that difference between a 90 and a 120 really enough to justify, all that you lose?
Yeah.
And the answer is no. So think about how big you want to go. Don't get hung up on what you think you should do or what you think is cool. Match it to your actual needs.
Another hard lesson learned, taller than 24 inches is a risk. Do you want your armpits wet or no?
It's tough, man. It's tough because...
Especially if you have 24 inch plus and that depth, that beyond 24 inches front to back. Now we're really talking some challenges of, well, I can't reach everything from the front. And if I got a 4-foot tank, I'm dang sure not reaching anything down in the back middle. So how am I going to get there? There's a lot to think about. My arm's not 24 inches.
I first saw a friend of mine's tank that was 3 feet deep.
Tall?
Tall. And you could see the fish like spinning them around, and they're going up, they're going down, and like, it's such a cool new dimension to the whole thing rather than back and forth, right? Yeah. It's like the difference between watching, which is kind of like 2D if they just go back and forth, but if you get depth of tank, all of a sudden it's like 3D, and then if you get height, man, it's like you went to the 4th dimension. So it's really, really appealing to get that extra height out of it. And in my tank, I'm like, what if I just, push it to the limits just a little bit and I get 26.5? Well, you know what? I'm exactly 2.5 inches from being able to touch the bottom in most places, and it sucks.
Yeah.
Right? I'll live with it, and it does look nice, but if I could do it over again, the thing would be 22 to 24 inches tall. I'll give up that, and I'll be able to clean and maintain it and plant coral on it and take care of it easier. Flip over a snail that needs flipping, whatever it is. Like, I will do it. It just isn't valuable enough for me to go above 24 inches. Yeah. Really think that one out before you do it. As somebody who really, really thought they would enjoy it.
I thought the same about my 90 cube or 93 gallon cube. I was like, oh man, I love the 30 inches by 30 inches and 28 inches tall. That's no big deal. I could not reach. There were so many things that got lost down there, and my tongs, they only work so many different ways than my fingers do. That I would never do it again.
I got pretty lengthy arms and fingers too, man. Like, so if I think about it, like, if your arm is shorter than this one, I don't know. All right.
Oh, this is a good point here.
Another hard lesson that you may not have thought of is going really big may require more power than you have.
Oh, I don't know. I've never considered, out of all the gear that I wanted to throw on my tank, and every extra piece of this and that, and all, because I'm a gear junkie. One thing that didn't cross my mind, and I don't know how many times I flipped that breaker, and I ended up running extension cords to another breaker, extension cord over to the tank, is the amount of power that this thing will suck just from a single, breaker on your outlet. Like, you almost have to divvy it up between 4 breakers, and that's where, when you're considering, like, going back to coming up here and talking about the piece of furniture in our house and how, if I actually spend some time thinking about, why this tank looking great, equal amount of time spent into how am I going to solve the power problem.
The big ones, the heaters, actually end up being the biggest suck because, like,
600 watts a piece,
yeah. And some of this you can actually define. I could probably run if I was only going to do a fish only in a big tank. I don't have to have really powered lights. The heat of the tank can probably maybe be a little bit lower. I can make some decisions that are different than I would on a reef tank. Don't need as much gear. So think about that, but remember some of these things that, like, how all this stuff intertwines. So, all right, what's next?
So the next episode of the 52 Weeks we're talking about today is sumps. And that episode was titled Sumps, What They Do and Which Should You Select. What's our core belief here?
So a core belief on a sump that defines how I'd approach a sump is the best sump design prioritizes function over form, and bonus points if it's future-proof. So all of our counsel will really be tied to that core belief of best sump design prioritizes function over form, and bonus points for future-proof.
All right, so here's what matters. Here's what we believe matters most. Remember what this thing is for. It holds gear and it allows for better gear. That's really all there is to it. I mean, you could have the really nice, gorgeous display and all this other stuff, but in the end, this is basically a box for your gear.
Yeah, so like, I don't know, the first time I had my first tank was a hang-on tank, and then I bought one with a sump, and I'm like, well, what does a sump do?
Yeah.
You know, all it really does is gives you a place to hide all of your gear. And then allows you to use better gear because it can be bigger.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a couple other things, but that's the core of it is I'm going to put my gear down in this thing and it will not be as ugly down there and I can probably use it a little bit better.
Yeah.
So everything you do here should be about how do I hold the gear I want and how do I allow for the quality of gear I want. When I select the sump, nothing else really matters.
There you go.
So what else really we believe matters for a sump is open areas are often better than specific designs.
Oh man, this one bit us right here in this tank. And not necessarily bit us, but this is that where that bonus points for future proof comes through. But the 160 is a classic example of this one where it was specifically designed for the filter sock chamber and then into this we really wasn't a refugium chamber. We wanted a bigger one. So, what ended up happening is you just start cutting away at the sump. If it were just a large open area for you to choose whether or not you're going to put a skimmer in there, whether or not you're going to make it a refugium, whether or not you're going to drop a roller mat or something in there, it's a whole lot simpler if you would have thought about that and had an open design well before you got pigeonholed into what you have.
So a lot of the trigger sumps are like that, where they're pretty open.
Big open.
The Red Sea glass ones, some of them
Those
are
are
really
nice.
just big open areas. They're not really fancy and just the way I like it.
Yeah.
And then I think of remember the old Skims ones? They look really cool. There's so many compartments for so many things.
Couldn't fit anything in there.
Couldn't fit anything in it.
I'm running into that with my tank in the office right now. I can't do anything in it.
Yeah, it's very, very limiting because we wasted all of the space with little gimmicky stuff.
Yeah.
And so, when you're selecting a sump, and the form over function, or function over form rather, really think about how valuable open space is and adjustable space.
Yeah.
Part of me wonders a little bit, why don't I just use a 40-gallon breeder
And those foam, or those
drop that
insert things?
aqua mesh down there, because
It worked.
the aqua mesh actually seems to capture the little micro bubbles.
Better than a baffle?
Yeah, and that'd be a good BRS TV Investigates, actually.
Yeah, actually a really good one.
But the little the mesh gets the micro bubbles. Now the water, if the auto top off doesn't work, all of a sudden the return chamber doesn't evaporate because there's only a gallon of water in there.
Yeah.
If it's the whole sump, then
Longer time until it actually runs dry.
yeah, and then I can reconfigure it. In fact, that was one of the things that we talked about today in a different video, which was the Fiji Cube has those configurable things for a 20 long. It's so you can take a 20 long, a 40 breeder, or a 10 gallon, and they sell you little baffle kits you can install into the glass box that you have to build exactly what you want. And then if you don't like it, it's usually probably just put together with some silicone. You can just razor it off and rebuild it to whatever way you want.
Man, I wonder if that's the future of over-under baffles are dead to me almost now.
Yeah, well,
well, we did that with the 20 long tank on the ULM. We took that aqua mesh and dropped it in there, and lo and behold, that worked perfectly. That's exactly what we need. And I think it's still running today in Nikki G's cube.
Yeah, and so the only thing would be if I wanted those baffles, it'd be all right, do I need a specific water level in the sump that only baffles will create for me?
Right, yeah.
Or can the whole thing just be at that level? Or do I have a micro bubble problem in this tank that only a baffle, and I haven't actually found the baffles to be particularly helpful there either.
Yeah.
And
so if you ever go to try to maintain them too, it's like there's almost always so close together, you cannot get into them. They're on the verge of being dead to me.
Verge of being dead to you, the baffles. All right. So think about the open areas better than specific designs.
Yeah. Next one up for there, what we believe matters most in a sump. Large enough to hold the water during a power outage. And that really comes down to that too, and this isn't like water level. I ran into this problem once where I had such like a long lock line. It was a reef ready tank. So the lock lines, I added extra lock lines so they could swing out like this and actually point in a different direction. What I failed to realize is when I bump that lock line down, it's now a straw siphoning my entire tank down into my sump. And guess what? My Profilux Model 4 did not have enough space to hold all of that water everywhere.
And you can drill little holes and stuff in the lock line, but those things get clogged too.
Yeah.
You know, and so just make sure that the whole thing can actually hold the water volume. If you're thinking of like one thing that matters most about a sump, it's figure that out. And it's really not that hard. You can look at your tank and just see, like, if the water went down to the bottom of the baffles or the bottom of the return, how many inches is it? There's calculators for, if it's 2 inches by 24 by 20 or 48, that's how much water it is. Can this sump hold that much water? If the answer is yes, you're probably pretty good.
Yeah.
So do the math on it. All right. This one.
This is gonna.
It's
gonna rattle some cages here.
I wish that everybody would do this because you'll have way higher success rates in the end. It seems to be catching on, but probably not as much as it should, which is I'm on the actually.
Oh no, you're up here at filter socks.
Yeah, I was on the bottom here. Actually, this one too.
This one too.
This actually, I'm gonna say all the things I just said apply to this one. It's funny. Okay, it's filter socks in the sump only if you want to change them. If you don't want to change your filter socks, skip it.
Don't buy a sump that has filter socks if you don't plan on changing them. And we're talking like changing every 3 days.
Yeah, like the filter socks only work if you change them every 3 days.
Yeah, I mean we've tested it. We should probably revisit that test also. But every 3 days, if you're not if you're Johnny on the spot when it comes to hey, it's day 3, this is sock changing day, then by all means get yourself a sump with a filter sock. Because once you choose that filter sock option, if you choose not to change them, guess what? You're stuck with that space that was made for filter socks, and now you just have useless space in a sump.
Okay, the marketing team probably just pulled the Ethernet from us because this is coming from people who sell like thousands, if not tens of thousands of filter socks. So yeah, I don't know, man. If you're not going to change them all the time, every 3 days, this is why you don't want one. Yeah, as somebody that used to use the filter socks, and I would just leave them in there, and the reason I would change them is because I'd hear the water overflow
over the top of them.
Right?
Like they're doing nothing.
Okay, so what I found since then is that they're actually doing more harm than they're doing good. And like I used to not like it when people call a canister filter a nitrate factory because they're not really creating nitrate.
No.
It's not pulling it out of thin air. It's just a filter. You know,
it's a filter that you're.
Nitrate is the food you put in.
So it's a filter you're less likely to change because of all of the process to get through it and change it.
Filter socks, nitrate factory, phosphate factory. This is why, because it captures all of not all, but like a lot of the turds and the food and everything in there, and it has to decay inside of that to the point that it breaks down into little molecules and release back in the tank. Some of which the skimmer will remove. But here's the piece of it is if you take out all of the filter socks, the skimmer will perform way better. Go test it if you're wondering right now. Pull out your filter socks and watch how your skimmer actually performs better. And I've seen it now a lot on the fleece material. Yeah. When the fleece material is pulling all of the turds and everything out of the water and the decaying food, the skimmer doesn't really produce much because it's not in there.
Yeah.
Right? And even if at the times where I've seen it get clogged, or the little sensor stops working and it's going down the overflow and all the stuff's decaying, still the skimmer doesn't work. But the moment I pull the fleece out, all of a sudden the skimmer works better, right? And it's not that like I need the skimmer to work better, because I'm actually happy the fleece is way easier to use.
Yeah.
But so filter socks here only if you plan on using them. Otherwise, pick a design that doesn't handicap you to that.
Yep.
Kind of like the one we had here, where we had to cut them all out to put the filter or the original roller mat in.
That's true. Which leads to the next one, and I mean, people are all over it. Fleece is the future. I personally, I know I am not astute, or I'm not rigid in my ways enough to pull filter socks every 3 days. I'm just not going to do it. I'm lazy. I won't have filter socks. But what I will do is change out that roll once it's done and completely rolled up. Right? That means that gives me a month or 2 months in some cases where I don't have to do anything other than, and then at the end I just go, oh, new one, done. Count me in. And not only that, it's such an effective tool, a filter tool.
I'm gonna go, like some people are like, oh, well, I don't want to spend the money on that. Okay, I understand.
Okay.
But here's the thing, skip the skimmer then, because I think the filter fleece is actually doing a better job than the skimmer.
Yeah, oh yeah, 100%.
So I think you're actually pulling out more waste with the actual rolling all the turds in the food, especially if you have high flow that keeps it suspended.
You're right.
Than you are in the skimmer. And so I know some people are thinking that's blasphemy. What, you mean no skimmer? Like, no, I just want the most effective nutrient solution and pollution solution for my money.
Yeah.
And the reality is, if more of us end up demanding and buying these fleece solutions, dude, it's just a roll of toilet paper and a motor with a float switch. It should only add like $100 to the whole design.
Yeah.
Maybe 150. I don't know. But like,
they're going to start getting cheaper.
It doesn't require any maintenance. Like your skimmer, you have to tune it. You have to make it work. You have to empty it. You have to do all this stuff to it. Why don't I just pull out the turds before they actually broke down, and it just rolls it right out of the tank for me?
Throw it away.
Yeah.
Well, it is an adjustable tool, a filter too, as well too, because I can adjust the water level in some cases where I will wait for my water level to reach here before it starts to roll, meaning there is a little more time where this material is exposed in the water. There is more time for it to break down. Or if I want to be a complete neat freak, I can go the opposite way and say I don't want my turds to be my filter toilet paper roll to be in the water decaying for any amount of time, gone immediately.
Mm-hmm. So on my fleece roll, there's like a water level sensor, and a lot of them will have this. And basically the way it works is, if you put the water temperature higher, I got a big gigantic square of fleece here, that is getting clogged over time. Once it gets clogged, it stops letting water through, the water level will go up and it will expose a little bit new paper. All right, well, that allows for some of it to rot if you make it too high. If I shrink it down, well, now only this much is exposed to water flow going through it, and that clogs way, way, way faster, and it's pulling out the turds in real time. So you can actually adjust the performance of your filter so easy with just water level, no tuning, no garbage.
The only way you can do that with a filter sock is I'm going to change it every day, or I'm going to change it every week.
Yeah, so bravo to Trigger for building like the Platinum series, but like, step up. Other people should be producing these things, and they should get cheaper, because it's just a toilet paper roll with a motor on it and a float switch. It's not rocket science. and what will happen? The reason that people will make them, by the way, is because all of us are demanding them and buying them.
We want fleece rollers.
We want
fleece rollers.
Filter socks are dead to me. Yeah, I think so. I don't know. Think about that. That's the core belief on some of those things. But what are the hard lessons that we would like to avoid in the future?
So this is out of our experience, straight from our experience. A hard lesson. One of the first one, water volume or dilution is minimal benefit. Meaning, like, how many times did you hear, add a sump because the water level or the water added water volume means less problems. Now, maybe if I have like a 10-gallon tank or a 20-gallon tank and I add a 40 breeder for a sump, then 100%. Like I've just added a lot more water volume, meaning the dilution of pollutants and everything else that can go wrong in the tank has just bought me a bunch of buffer room. But if I put a 60 or 40-gallon type of sump on like a 200-gallon tank, I really didn't buy myself jack. Nothing.
Yeah. So like that's the piece that like oftentimes if people regurgitate the same message over enough that it is like partially true, then it just becomes fact, right?
That wouldn't have been. I've heard that one so many times.
Get the biggest sump you can because water volume's king. Blah blah blah. Well, like that sentence isn't wrong. It's just do the math while you're doing it.
Yeah.
If I have a 200-gallon tank and a 20% or 20-gallon sump or whatever, 40-gallon sump.
Yeah.
Like. I'm only diluting it by 20%, meaning like if nitrate was going to be 10, it's now 12. Like test kit doesn't even measure that accurately, you know, like it isn't really of that much value. But like you said, if I put a 40-gallon breeder on a 10-gallon cube, I just turned it into 5 times as much water. If it was
now
full,
that matters.
Triple the water.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely true there. So do the math for yourself when people are giving that advice.
Don't pick a sump just because somebody tells you the water volume means it's going to benefit your tank more, the dilution.
Yeah, and so the message is always bigger is better in sumps too. But when you do that, then I don't have any room in there for my test kits. I don't have room for the reservoirs, for
my CO2 canister, for my calcium reactor.
I don't have any room for
stuff.
anything in there.
Yeah, all I need is for the sump to hold the right size equipment and to hold the water level when the power goes out. Like, it doesn't have to be as big as possible, because then you're sacrificing some space that you could use for other things.
All right, just high percentage, low percentage pass. Consider that how you do it. Hard lessons for the future on sumps as well. All-in-one forces cheaper gear that doesn't work as well, and water changes are number one. All right, so this is kind of inverse of what we said earlier, but if you buy an all-in-one, the whole thing will be cheaper because you don't have the option to buy a fancy sump, and a fancy plumbing, and a fancy skimmer, and a fancy roller mat.
Yeah.
And water changes are just the number one thing, and it will take a lot of salt before you've overcome the cost of all those things that we just mentioned. So again, a plug for the all-in-one design, specifically for newer reefers who just want to get a successful tank under the belt that looks clean and nice in pretty much any room.
Yeah, 100%. Another hard lesson learned: get the sump right the first time because it's the hardest to change and no one does it. Again, this is a lesson learned by myself. I bought the Profilux 4, or the Aqueon Profilux 4, old sump back in the day. The only way to get it in and out of my system was when my tank was off the stand and I had to go straight down through. Well, guess what happens now if I want to change my sump or change the design, or if it breaks, I can't get that thing out. I have to tear my whole entire tank apart just to get it out.
So there's the general message of buy once, because it actually will cost you 5 times as much to just keep buying the same damn thing over and over and over again. But if it's a skimmer, so be it. You just keep swapping it out. I would still tell you to just go skimmerless until you can afford the one you want. Do some water changes until you get there. But even if that wasn't the case, I can just swap them out pretty easy. The sump is so hard to change. Plumbing, gluing, everything. Downtime. Every wire is going into this thing. You will never do it.
Yeah.
Right now, if Randy came to me, he doesn't like the sump that's on his 60. If he came to me and said, Ryan, can I have a new sump? I'd go, go pick whatever one you want, dude. I don't care.
Yeah.
Will you actually do it?
No, because that thing was plumbed by Aaron, and I know how well it is and how perfect every angle, and I would never be able to get it right the same way.
Dude, it was
never.
It was done really, really well, but at the same time, the skim sump was too intricate and is really limiting.
Yep. I want a new sump. Dang sure won't do it.
We've talked about replacing the sump on the 160 here too, but nobody's got time for that garbage. And this one's actually sitting out.
That's true.
It would have to be catastrophically wrong.
Yeah.
To change.
To
So
actually-
get it right the first time on a sump. Think about it and make sure you do it. It's probably the most critical piece to get right the first time because you will probably never, ever change it.
100%.
Yeah. All right. Room for dual returns.
This is, I think,
Repeat it again.
I do not think there should be some manufacturers out there who are making return chambers so small that I can't fit 2 return pumps in there. Stop making them that way.
Yeah.
Like, you should always have the option for 2.
Okay, so 2 return pumps. This is the heart of the tank, connecting all the light support to the tank. If it goes down, well, the heart stopped working, and related things are going to start happening to the tank.
But what if you have 2 hearts?
Yeah, you got a backup heart. I want one right now. Yeah, so if you do that and you have 2 returns, and the beauty of it is you can get 2 smaller ones.
Yeah.
Because you don't need like perfect filtration in the event that one of them went down.
I just need the water to circulate.
Yes.
Yeah.
You just need water to go through it. So make sure that whatever the baffle space in your sump, even if you don't want to spend the money today, has room for 2 returns when finally you learn this lesson from it breaking and say, oh, I remember what those guys said. We should do this.
Yeah.
And most of your your tanks have actually 2
overflows,
or nozzles
returns,
or return areas,
Yeah.
and it's super easy to just plumb one back up to each one.
You know what was really hard on the 160 is splitting off and manifolding 2 returns, right, off of 1 pump. Had we had this insight back when the 160 went up, 1 return line would get 1 pump, 1 return line would get the other, and it would have been a much safer tank. Not that anything really happened to it because we chose, in lieu of dual returns after we realized this, we chose just a really reliable type pump.
Yeah, or buy a $2,000 pump.
Yeah, I mean,
which is way more expensive than just doing 2.
Yeah, so I don't think I'd ever set up another tank without 2 returns. And it's not. Yeah, it's all about the safety, and this goes back to the very first thing that we said is the most successful reefers plan for the inevitable as it happens. Well, 2 return pumps is one of the ways to do that.
So if you were going to say, hey Ryan, you could have one of 2 things. You could have a $2,000 Vectra or $2,000 Abyss or 2 few $100 Vectras. I would choose the Vectras regardless of the money. Yeah. Because even though it's cheaper, man, like the $2,000 pump, a single one with a single failure point isn't as good as the 2 of the less expensive options. So dual returns. Make sure your sump has room for that. Here's one that a lot of people don't think, and again, I'm thinking skims again here. Hard lesson.
Hard lessons. Consider cleaning.
Consider how you're going to clean this bastard.
It's true. It's true. Right now, the little tiny skims one I have in my 60-gallon cube in the office that we did for the ULMs, I cannot get my hand, not only, so there's filter socks, but there's a lid on there, which was a really cool idea, a lid to keep the sound down. But the lid is so small, I cannot get my arm past like my forearm, and I don't have big giant forearms, but I can't get down in there. Not only that, but it has a chamber in the back where the downspouts from the drains go down. Then there's a baffle. There's 0 chance that I can get back there. Not even with the end of a python, my hand. The only thing I could do is get like maybe a little peam up or something and get down there, stir it up, and hope I get all the detritus out. I can't even see in there.
Yeah, so like, I mean, a lot of people don't clean their sumps, and it might be because of this, actually, just because it's such
difficult.
A giant pain in the butt.
Yeah.
The sump is just designed not to do this, right? But if you get the right pump, you kind of create like a little vacuum and just suck all the garbage out. Like what I do recently is that
the Ultra Zero.
The Ultra Zero, because the Ultra Zero sucks off the bottom, and you only have like that couple millimeters or whatever of water.
Yeah.
And there's so much garbage on there that all I got to do is move the Ultra Zero around, kind of like a little vacuum, and it just sucks all the garbage up because the sump is open. It's an open space without 8 million little compartments in it.
Yeah.
And I can just clean it without having to do anything, really. And so consider that, because all that detritus and stuff, it's just kind of like a time bomb that's building up in the bottom of the thing.
And the sump is one of the easiest places to remove that stuff, because there is no sand, there is no rock, you don't have to move anything. The worst thing you have to do is move a skimmer out of the way and suck up the detritus off the bottom. It's the easiest to clean.
I hate to say it this way, but it's true. Dirty is synonymous with uncared for, and if you make it really hard to not to care for it, it's going to be dirty and uncared for.
100%.
There you go. All right, another hard lesson here is a sump without an area for a fuge. I will never, ever, ever do this again. Like never, well, unless there's some new miracle that shows up on my doorstep.
Yeah?
I made this mistake. I got this beautiful Royal exclusive sump. It's really elaborate. It's really cool. It's all lit up. It has the fleece on it. You know, perfect skimmer, perfect everything. But like I've always had some issues with nutrients in this tank because I'm not running the Fuge, and the Fuge is my favorite filter on the whole thing.
Yeah.
So it's the most effective, it's the easiest thing, and there's no place for this on here. I'm gonna have to plumb one externally to make this happen, which is, you know, more leak thoughts and you know, more pumps, more stuff to maintain. I personally, even if you don't think that you will use a Fuge today, buy something that will allow you to use a Fuge in the future if you so find that you want to. That's that piece up front.
Yep, what matters most? Open areas.
Open areas, bonus points for future proof.
Yeah, bonus points.
Yeah. All right, so what's next?
All right, episode number 4 from the 52 Weeks of Reefing came to us is planning a safer tank with redundancy. This redundancy word is kind of something new to me as far as the hobby over the last like 3 years. Really, when we started diving into like controllers as monitors or dual return pumps or all these different fail safes that you can put into a system. What's our core belief though?
Core belief in terms of planning a safer tank with redundancy is everything breaks. Faster in a corrosive environment of saltwater spray. Mistakes will be made. Plan for it rather than react to it.
Everything breaks.
Everything will break multiple times.
Doesn't matter how much you spent on it.
Doesn't matter how much you spent on it
It'll
at all.
break.
It will break or require maintenance. I mean, that break can mean it like literally will never work again, or that it just got jammed and needs some maintenance.
Yeah.
But this is the way I think of redundancy, and some of you have heard this before, but basically what we're doing is creating an artificial environment for these corals and fish to live in Minnesota when they very much like don't belong in Minnesota.
Yeah, exactly.
In the same way that Randy and I don't belong in space, right? And so we'll take the space shuttle up, we'll go on to the International Space Station, and you know what? There's something up there that's going to regulate the temperature. There's something up there that's going to make sure that we have food. There's something that's going to make sure that we get rid of our waste. There's something up there that's going to provide us oxygen and get rid of the carbon dioxide. There's something up there for all of these things, and then there's a backup, and there's a backup to the backup. Yeah. And these are things for people that are only going to live up there for a matter of days to weeks or even a couple months. We're going to do this for years to a decade.
Yeah, 10 years plus maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot to think about.
So we don't necessarily have to have a backup to the backup to the backup to the backup. You just need to have a mentality and consider these things.
Yep. So here's what we believe matters most when it comes to planning a safer tank with redundancy. First one is redundancy can be absolute attention. There's people that say all the time, I don't need to buy a backup heater. I don't need the dual returns. I don't need this. I don't need that. I'm constantly monitoring my tank. And for, I don't know, a majority of the reefers out there, that's not just a luxury that they have. But if you do have the ability to monitor your tank with absolute attention, that can be your redundancy.
Actually, I'm going to go one step farther than it can be. it might be the best redundancy almost.
Just constant eye on
If
it.
you are the type of person that is going to be super duper in tune with your tank, you're going to watch it all the time, you have a pulse on everything that's going on, that might actually be one of the best redundancies, is the human being's absolute attention.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, well that's just like one portion of the pie though. Like there's so many people that aren't going to live up to that standard, and they will all fail if that's the case. You know, so another thing that I believe that matters in that spirit, probably the first one, is dual thermostats, dual relays for your heater.
Yes.
Heater, most likely thing in the long run to nuke the whole tank. You to come home one day and just say, oh crap.
Yeah.
You know, probably worse than that. And just, it's over. The ride is done. You get off. The original thing is winning's easy, not losing is the hard part.
Yeah.
You just lost because you didn't plan for the heater, right?
So dual thermostats, dual relays, that's like, instead of putting 2 heaters on one controller, separating them out to 2 controllers. So now I have one piece that can fail here, and one piece that can fail here. The likelihood of both of them failing at the exact same time, at the exact same moment, very, very low. And we're choosing higher paths of percentage of success here.
Mm-hmm. So in this case, what I would say is if I bought like a Phoenix heater, it has its own thermostat, it has its own temperature probe, and it has its own relay or triac turning the thing on and off, right? Yeah. I'm going to plug that one into another one, you know, there's all kinds of them. Like Auto Aqua has this little cube that just kind of automatically turns off at 83 or something.
That's
you
true.
Plug it in there, you don't even have to set it up.
Yep.
You could pick something like the Ranco, you can pick something like an Apex, you can pick something like a GHL. You can pick, you know, all kinds of different, you know, controllers. That JBJ makes one, but you plug one into another one.
Yep.
And now you are protecting the tank proper from the thing getting stuck on. So off is
you got some time.
You got a pretty good amount of time before things go totally haywire. On, bad news. And the nature of it is in there, they're turned on and off a million times a year, and eventually the things get arced and they stay on for good. Happens all the time. You can just choose whether or not you want it to happen to you.
Oof.
All right.
We also believe that matters most. We just talked about this one, and we'll double down on it. Dual return pumps.
It's the heart.
Why not 2 hearts? 2 hearts is better than one when the life depends on it, right?
If we're just waiting around for the thing to break, low percentage outcome.
Yeah.
Like I have to notice it. So having 2 allows for connecting all of the life support, all the things for this space shuttle to the habitat in which the astronauts or the corals and fish live.
Exactly.
All right. Another one is an electricity backup solution.
So like backup battery all the way to backup home generator.
There can be so many things here, and the right answer is like look around your neighborhood and, you know, kind of ask your neighbors how often the power goes out if you don't already know. I will say most people that I've talked to have never had a power outage that lasted more than a day or so.
Yeah, I've never experienced one.
Most of them are like 8 hours. And so if you live in a heavily populated area that doesn't have like, you know, a lot of trees, or if the power lines are buried, really probably not a huge issue for you. If you can go down your street and see all of the trees hitting all of the lines, and you're in a low density area, you're in for it.
Yeah.
Because not only are those trees in a storm eventually going to take those things out, but also in a low density area, you're the last. And my knowledge on this, at least in Minnesota, is when the power goes out, the power company prioritizes each fix by how many people it will benefit. So if you live in an apartment building across the street from 4 other apartment buildings, you're first. If you live out in the middle of nowhere and there's only 5 houses on the block, you are dead last, man. It might be 3 weeks before you get power again. So, you know, think about those things. And so if you're a short-term power outage person, cover this one for sure, because this is the most common one out there. And it's just a battery backup for your pump. like for your airflow or the water flow, because gas exchange, and suffocating the fish is the primary concern here.
Yeah, I mean,
And like once one goes, they all go.
and it happens quick.
Yeah.
As soon as the power's off and the water stops flowing, talk about buildup.
And stuff starts dying, and the corals start going with it.
Yeah.
So it goes pretty quick. So by quick, like it actually doesn't have a lot. Nothing really happens until it all happens.
Yeah.
And so you might feel like, oh, I had a power outage for that long, and that's fine. Well, you were probably just 1 hour away from something terrible. So there's also like fit your budget, because they have like those little pen plaques, or I don't know which ones we sell now, but they're little battery operated
Airstones, yeah.
driven things. And so these things are $15. They plug in the wall, they have batteries in them, and the moment the power goes out, it starts bubbling air stones in it. And the fish, for the most part, are kind of smart, and they'll end up huddling around the air stones. This is what I would call the bare minimum.
Bare minimum.
Bare minimum, right? But like it will probably work for quite a while. Better yet is a battery backup for your float power heads. You can use those computer ones, but they don't last very long.
They're really short.
You'll get like 4 or 6 hours out of it.
We've tested it, so we're going to just take our words there. We have investigates on that.
It was always a suspicion of mine, and then when we did the actual test on a whole bunch, an array of those brand new UPSs built for computers.
Pretty disappointing.
It was pretty disappointing.
For the cost that you spend on them.
Yeah, the conversion from AC to DC, or from DC to AC
and back to
loses
DC.
so much.
Yeah.
And so, but the DC ones, like the Vortex have one, Tunes has one.
Yep.
I think the Gyre might have one.
The Gyres have that. Yeah.
So those types of things, and you don't need it for every last pump. You just need one to be running.
Yeah.
Right. So outside of that, there's the generator, and I used to not be a huge fan of the generator, but there's a point at which, like, I would say, if your tank now costs you something in the magnitude of $5,000, a $500 generator probably makes sense. Yeah. If there's some kind of equation there, you guys can figure it out.
Well, and get it before you need it. That's.
Oh yeah, because once the power out, there's like no.
You won't find one.
They're all sold in 3 seconds. And in fact, if you hear that there's a mega storm coming in your area, go buy it right now. Don't wait, because you won't find it. Or when it does happen, start calling states away and be willing to go drive 15 hours to go get one and come back. Yeah.
Stay there while you're there.
Yeah, I don't know. So yeah, but that I will say that in my own home, these things are pretty expensive, but you can get whole house generators that run off natural gas. I don't know. Like if you're in an area that loses power all the time, I think building that into the house is pretty valuable. Like one of the reasons we did it at our house is because we lived on this little peninsula, and the power, I was told, goes out for a week at a time.
Nobody's coming out there.
I don't know about you, man. I don't want to live without every couple of years without power for a week.
No.
And so it's just kind of the nature of where you're at, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. But think about the power outages. Definitely find a pump. The number one pump that you guys pick up is Vortex. So that one has the easiest thing. It runs for 80 hours.
MP10, we ran it for 80 hours.
80. Yeah, long, much farther. And then the next thing that will matter will be temperature. And temperature is a little bit of a different animal, because it takes a lot of energy to keep the temperature up or down.
Yeah, true.
Right, and so bags of ice will keep it down if you live in a hot area, and bags of hot water will keep it up. There's other solutions out there that you should research, but like if it got really down to it, and I don't have power and I don't have any heat or hot water in my house, I can literally start a fire and get hot water and float that hot water in there. So this is the multiple day problem, and like into crisis mode management, but there are other solutions out there for that type of thing. Another actually electricity option is those inverters that plug into your car. So those things are like $30. Like go buy one of those things today.
Start your
Walmart
car.
has them, whatever. I did that actually
Yeah.
at my house over here in Crystal originally, and we had a extension cord going all the way out to my car on the street, and it was running just the MJ mods, when the power would go out there. So think about the electricity is a big deal.
So planning for a safer tank with redundancy, what we believe matters most, a float on the ATO. And this is like
Float valve.
yeah, I mean either built into the so the 160 we have a float in there, which is mechanical, meaning that there's not there's not an electrical sensor, there's not an optical sensor, there's not a float sensor. All of these things that can fail. It's harder to have a mechanical float fail. It's just mechanical. Pops up, closes the valve.
Yeah, so float switches that sit at the water level, those things tend to get salt creep that eventually stops them, one high or low.
Yeah, both.
The water level sensors, the opticals, they don't fail off very often or on, but they get dirty and they fail off fairly frequently. But like if you just put in those, like what a $10 float valve that, when the water level goes up, it just pushes the valve closed. It's just drilling like a 1/2-inch hole in the side of whatever container. You can do it in glass. You can do it in your acrylic.
Plastic.
You just put that thing in there, and don't put it at the water level as the primary level control,
Right.
because then you'll get salt creep in the little port there too. You want to put it a few inches above, and it's the last fail-safe of redundancy on this case, of making sure you don't flood your floors and the tank. So
100%.
Float on the ATO. I'll throw another one here. What matters most is a water level alarm. And I mean, it's nice if you had the water levels like from your Apex.
Yeah,
and
leak
set it off,
sensors,
your
all this
alarm
other
goes
stuff.
off on my phone, everything.
It can
But
be simple.
it can be really simple.
Cheap.
Watchdog.
11, 12 bucks.
$12 you can buy it from us. You can go to Home Depot. It might be
buy 'em there
$9
too.
at Home Depot
Yeah,
actually.
yeah.
Save $3. And it's a watchdog. It's just a little sensor, and then when it detects water, it sends off an ear-piercing noise.
Yeah.
Okay, so someday you're going to do something to this tank, which is going to cause it to leak. It could be, the burst a seam. It could be the plumbing, soft plumbing tube came off.
Forgot to change your filter sock.
Forgot to change your filter sock. Could be the you did what Randy did, and you bumped the turns down, and while you're doing maintenance, and then turned off the power, and then flooded all over the place. It could be the skimmers just going insane for some reason, spraying water all over. Someday it'll happen, and what you would like to do is know about it immediately. And for like $9 to $10 or something, the Watchdog will solve that for your problem.
100%.
We have them, but you can also get them at Home Depot and stuff like that.
We also believe matters most is a pH controller or monitor. And pH being one of the, like a canary in the tank, to some degree.
Yeah, I didn't really understand it at first. Everybody said pH was super important, and I just didn't get it. But I later found out that pH, in most cases, at least in the cases that I implement, is an indication that your chemistry solution just got jacked.
Yeah.
Like you're overdosing, underdosing, whatever. Like if the pH starts to go down, the alkalinity probably was going down too. If it's going up rapidly, it's because you're overdosing your 2-part, your Kalkwasser, or any of those types of things.
Yeah.
If it's going down fast, maybe your calcium reactors got jacked. Any one of these things, the pH can monitor, hopefully one that has a noise that tells you, hey, dude, do something about it, save me. Or a controller that, even better, it can just like turn off the ATO pump, turn off the dosing pump, turn off anything. And like, it's even human
Turn on
error.
the
Like
fan.
I've seen people like, oh, this thing needs some calcium, so I'll just turn on the calcium dosing pump for what I thought was gonna be 10 minutes, and then I forgot.
You did it to this one with alkalinity.
I forget things all the time.
Yeah.
I'm the spaciest person you've ever met. And
Those
Dave
things.
here, like when we do these things, we put our house keys on whatever we're gonna do, because I need to remember to come back here and turn it off, and to get home I need to do it. Because you're just gonna forget so many things. But having an actual controller there to back up, I hope I remember every time for the next 10 years.
It doesn't work.
hope I remember for 10 years every single time is a low percentage path.
Low path to success. Next one is consider what happens when anything with a moving part or plug fails. I mean, we hit this at the very top when we said, the most successful reefers are the ones that plan for the inevitable failure. This is the highest path to success when it comes to redundancy.
Yeah. If you just look at the thing,
you'll
catch 80-20 of it right away.
Yeah, all you have to do is go, okay, my protein skimmer has moving parts. What happens if it fails?
What happens if I unplug it? What happens if I plug it in and the water level is too high?
Yeah, all over the place.
What happens in this case, in that case, and then decide to do something with it.
Then start planning for that.
Consider what happens with anything with a moving part. Anything with a moving part will eventually get jacked here.
Anything.
Anything with a plug will eventually get jacked as well. Like anything that relies on electricity will eventually fail.
Everything fails.
Understand what's going to happen when that goes, and you're going to hear tons of this throughout the series, so you probably don't have to go build all this for yourself.
Right.
But, really think about anything you put on there if this went bad, because eventually it will, for sure.
100%. I mean, that's our core belief. Everything breaks, even faster in a corrosive environment. Mistakes will be made. Plan for it rather than react to it.
Nailed it.
Dang.
All right. Visual. Okay, what also matters most here in terms of a safer, redundant tank? Visual, audible, or mobile alarms when it happens. Yeah, so if the tank went cold, I had this happen to me.
I have no idea.
I didn't know.
You gotta put your hand in there, but how many times am I walking by just dipping my finger in?
Never.
Exactly.
I wouldn't know that it's cold except for stuff that's dying, which is too late.
Could be a week later, I'm time for my weekly water change, and I feel, ooh, that water's cold, and then not even realize that it's been that way for multiple days.
Not everybody's actually that in tune that they know exactly what 72 feels like.
Every time I feel my tank, it says 78, and all of my sensors say 78. I put my finger in there, like, God, that tank is cold. And then I look, it's like, no, it's 78.
Yeah, so the perfect one is visual. So like for temperature, you can get like a $2 sticker and stick it on there and it'll give you the temperature. And I'm not really looking in this case for it to be 100% accurate.
No,
it's just a sticker. But I do know what bad looks like.
I know what that bright orange and red color looks like on the top end, and I know what that dark blue color looks like on the bottom end.
I'm looking for
be catastrophe.
In between.
Yeah.
It's a $2 catastrophe alarm, right? Visual can also be a flashing light. So like those lights that we were showing from Adaptive Reef, plugs into your Apex.
Green light, red lights.
And walk up. Green light says AA game. Red light says help me. Right? Audible alarm.
Man.
This is like a double-edged sword because like my tunes oscillator alarm goes off and it makes you want to unplug it, which causes new problems. Eventually I use the feed mode.
We've all done that.
But what I want is an audible alarm. When something really bad is happening, I want you to wake me the hell up.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? Get up and save the animals, right? And my phone text ain't doing it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and if you guys wake up to a little buzz from your text, I turn my phone off at night. So like,
well, your other pets, your dogs and your cats, they can audibly let you know that something's wrong with them. Bark, whine, cry, whatever. Your fish they can't hear your fish.
No, they're just down there.
So you have to do something about it.
Yeah, and so audible, and then the mobile part is actually the nicest. Like if it says something like the weird thing is like the CJ pump will tell you the temperature of the tank. It will also tell you if it loses connection with the pump, meaning there's a power outage probably.
Good to know since I don't even spend 20% of my time in my house.
Yeah, so the CJ DC pump kind of like weird little things built into it. But also if you have an actual controller, they will tell you that. I mean, to be honest, man, in a perfect world, the heater itself will be Wi-Fi and just tell me that thing.
Tell you when
the
it's
return pump itself will be Wi-Fi and just tell me that thing. I shouldn't have to actually necessarily plug it all into a controller either. So in a perfect world anyway. But yeah, visual, audible, or mobile alarms, when it happens, way higher percentage path than assuming you're just going to stumble upon it.
Yeah, that's a terrible practice.
All right, next.
Another what we believe matters most is, an ounce of prevention, right? Knowing what to do beforehand when it comes to a chemistry, a temperature, or a pollutant issue, having a plan in place, and maybe not even a plan, but just knowing like, if alkalinity were to overdose, I know what to do. If kalkwasser were to overdose, I know what to do. If the temperature went way above, I've already got my ice packs ready to go. If my tank gets polluted, I've got a thing of carbon ready to go. It's already preloaded. I can drop it in. I got a massive amount of water on hand for a water change. Knowing how to solve these problems before you run into the problems, way higher percentage path.
So I'm going to share a couple of them right now, actually. So in terms of what to know beforehand with chemistry, the most common thing will be like we way over or underdosed like alkalinity, calcium, magnesium, or something like that.
Most likely
right?
over, right?
Yeah, over, right? And so if you know what to do immediately, tank won't skip a beat, right? And so I had a couple of these instances. One, I had 10 gallons of kelp going to a 90-gallon tank. I just happened to Google and find the right answer immediately, which is start putting vinegar into the tank, small amounts until you get it down. In this case, throw the whole idea of slow and stable is the best path. Throw that in the trash, right? You want to get it back into a safe zone as fast as possible because we're no longer talking about stability killing stuff. We're talking about your tank is now toxic.
Yeah.
It is going to kill everything. And so I was able to, I woke up in the middle of the night, not because of audible alarm, but because I started to hear the gurgling of the top off that I had, and like I immediately knew I just filled it today.
Yeah.
And so I ran to it, Googled it, and luckily I found that right forum. But like, what if I hadn't found that thing and I didn't know what to do? Everything would be dead. And in this case, the only thing that I lost was some crabs and some xenia. Everything else, man, made it through that catastrophe. Another one is I had an old girlfriend that actually dumped a bunch of alkalinity into the tank for some reason. I can't remember why she did it, but she called me up, was really, really worried about it. And she's like, the tank is all white. And I'm like, all right, dump some vinegar in it, but a little bit. And she dumped it and she's like, oh my God, the pH is now 6.5. And I'm like, okay, dude, dump more alkalinity and soda ash back in. And she's like, well, which one is soda ash? And I'm like, well, and this is stuff you gotta know off the hand because you're on the phone. I was like, well, take some of the calcium, or take one of each. The one that makes a white poof in the water, that's the one you need to add. Do it quickly. And then we did a couple of these, but we got safe and nothing died, right? She's like, even the fish, she called me because the fish were upside down.
Yeah.
And they were really freaking out. Nothing died. Same thing here at my office.
Same thing in the E170. You walked in, you look, cloudy tank. It's been dosing sodium bicarb all day, or all night long, which doesn't have that pH. We would have caught it, with the Apex or with the monitors, but because it didn't have that pH boosting effect, it just steadily dripped. And when you come in, cloud, just like white cloud.
Alkalinity is probably 40.
We're lucky. We're fortunate enough here in the office to have. There's a 220-gallon vat there. There's a 90-gallon vat there. There's a 300-gallon vat full of salt water, ready to go salt water at all times, that we were able to do a fast, almost a 60% water change or 100%, almost 100% water change, solved it immediately. But that whole point of knowing what to do beforehand or planning for it.
So if that happened to you, so in this case, my problem isn't just the pH, it's that the alkalinity is like 40, right? And that's going to kill everything too. So the only solution there's no way to pull alkalinity out of the tank in a fast, medium manner. Water changes are it. Mix up that water, blend it as fast as humanly possible, and start your water changes. Here we happen to have big tanks that can just suck 40 gallons of water out of one of them, do a water change in those, and we were able to change it out immediately. You didn't even see color change.
There was nothing.
You didn't, tomorrow, the next day, you would have never even knew it happened because we knew what to do the moment we saw it. We didn't have to do the research.
And you already spoke on knowing what to do on temperature to the point where a bag of hot water can solve the cold, and some bags of ice or even plastic bottles with water that are ice can solve the heat. But having those things in the freezer, ready to go, or being able to get some water and put it in a jug or whatever, ready to go. Hot water's easier to get, but the cold water specifically.
Well, and then if you got hot tank, like if you got a tank that's like 96, right? The solution is let's get it down as fast as possible because stuff is about to go die.
Yeah.
Right?
If not already.
Yeah, I mean, I want to get this thing back down to, 82-ish, somewhere in there. I mean, I prefer to normally maintain the tank around 78, but I want to get it down something reasonable that isn't going to kill anything as fast as humanly possible because it's in death zone.
Yeah.
The inverse is true of too low. So if I walk up to it at 70 degrees, I'm probably going to not just fix the heater and let it immediately go back up to 78. I think I'm going to let it go. Maybe I'll get a little faster to 74, and then maybe a degree every day or something, or half a day, whatever. I wouldn't go, but there's a difference between that stability piece and like, oh my God, it's so toxic right now. If I don't do something, it's all gonna die. So just have that in your mind. Like there's just like that little bit of common sense that happens in here, looking at what's going on. Like, does the stability pice, trump out the it's all going to die
emergency
right now.
piece, yeah.
Yeah, like it's been toxic. So that's the same thing with pollutants too. So people do this all the time, and you really need to think about this one in a different mindset than most people do. It's the tank all the time. Just something happens, and you don't really know why it looks like crap today.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Eventually, you'll come to the conclusion like maybe there's a pollutant that's got into this tank. Maybe some copper got in there. Maybe nitrates and phosphates have built up, or maybe the copper that's in my fish food is built up.
Maybe your air conditioner is leaking
dripping
from the ceiling down into the tank.
Maybe the lotion on my hands. Maybe my kid dropped pennies in the tank. Whatever the hell thing you think is happening here, and then what they do is they run out and do an amazing 20% water change.
20%.
That means 80% of it's still there. Like 80% of whatever is pissing it off is still there. And then even if you do a 50% water change and it solves it, you should continue because half of what was pissing these corals off is still in the water.
Yeah.
And if you did a big water change and it actually solved it, change it all out.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not talking about doing a 100% water change in a single day, even though I have done that in severe events. But if you do that, start thinking about how I can do 30% water changes, every day or every other day until I get to the point, you do 4 or 5 of those things, and you're now down to, instead of 50% of it still in there, maybe 10.
Yeah.
Whatever. A totally different thing. So, pollutants is definitely that. Now, water changes are the best solution to that. You can go to your store, by the way, buy the water, local fish store, or you can mix it up yourself in a big vat. But think about it in that frame of mind. And there are some solutions for big tanks. I've seen some big 500-gallon tanks crash.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have 250 gallons of water sitting around, man, to do a 50% water change. And even then, is it all heated? And it takes a while to heat up 250 gallons of water, all this stuff. So then there's things that you can use like resins to pull out. Like my knee jerk before I do the water change is always carbon.
Yes.
It's super free, cheap.
Throw some carbon in there.
$3 in carbon may just well solve your problem. And if it does solve my problem, I might still think about whatever's in there, man, I might want to still water change it out.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Then there's that stuff like Brightwell has.
That Pureit.
Pureit.
Yeah, it's got some resin beads in there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's designed to pull out heavy metals.
Yeah.
So note though that resins like that are a little bit indiscriminate. So yeah, they're a big heavy hammer solution to a problem, but kind of a last resort too, because they're going to pull out good things too.
Yeah, trace elements, all kinds of stuff that might be beneficial.
Indiscriminate, all the things that it's going to pull out. So
but if you have it on hand and you're prepared for it and you know what to do, you're winning the battle already.
Perfect chemistry is less important than getting the poison out.
That's true.
So think about it in that frame of mind. All right.
So some hard lessons we've learned on planning a safer tank with redundancy. The false security that comes from it hasn't happened to me yet decreases your success rates for everyone, or for not just for you, but for everyone who listens to you. I don't know, that hasn't happened to me. I've had this thing for so long. Or no, I choose this style of equipment and it's just not a problem. That hasn't happened to me. Okay, remember what we said at the top. Everything breaks. So if it hasn't happened to you yet, you're not only, that mentality of it hasn't happened to me yet, not only hurts you, but every single person you tell that to.
It's just true, man.
Yeah.
And so this actually is one of my biggest pet peeves, because as somebody that has been doing this for a while, has probably like 10 decades or 100 years of reefing between all the people that have done this here.
Yeah.
Might even be 200 years. And then 8 million phone calls that I've been part of, and emails and conversations at shows. Like, I know exactly what is likely to fail because I've heard it 8 million times now, you know? And then, so it's so hard for me to see, you know, somebody come out there and say, you don't need to do that, you know, because it hasn't happened to me and I'm just fine.
Yeah.
Okay, well, dude, it just hasn't happened to you yet. And like, so be it for you, you're making an informed decision, but like, I'm even feel worse for the person that's listening to that person and taking that counsel, because it's a much lower path to success.
Yeah,
you know, and
100%.
it's not being presented that way. It's just like, well, it could happen. Like in a long enough timeline with enough people, some of the people will be successful this way, and you're one of them.
Don't worry about
for now.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. The false sense of security, that hasn't happened to me yet. So, and it doesn't mean like we can't afford to go out and like put every last tool in all of it.
No.
But like, you know what? Every 6 months I can solve another problem.
Yeah.
You know, and just like, don't think about it as I'm going to wait until it happens. All right. Okay, that's the relation
Which
to
goes
this one.
to the next one. Yeah.
Hard lessons on planning a safer tank with redundancy, assuming that you will be there when it breaks. All you got to do is ask yourself this: how many hours a day do you sleep? How many hours a day are you at work? And how many hours a day do you sit in front of the tank and would actually notice if there was a problem? It's probably
80,
2 hours
20?
a day.
Or 90-10?
Yeah, and there's probably days you miss entirely or wouldn't notice, and it would go on into the next day. So just assuming that I'll just happen to be in front of it and notice when it breaks, low percentage outcome.
Solve that. Hard lesson, waiting until it's worthy of protecting versus protecting a valuable future. It's kind of like this thing, this 160 here, do you think it was worth an investment in protecting back when it was maybe 1 or 2 frags in it, or 0 frags in it?
It's, you know, I don't know. This one balances between infinite budget and not, but like, once you have, you know, $5,000 wrapped into this, and the corals are big colonies and whatever, everybody will say this is worth protecting.
It's worth protecting.
Is it worth protecting when they're all tiny little nubbins?
I mean, future. How much of an investment did you put in the tiny little nubbins? Because I've bought 5 tiny little nubbins for $1,000 before. Now those little nubbins are worth protecting. But you know, even if I filled my tank with $5 little nubbins that are now massive, gigantic colonies, still worth protecting.
You know, the analogy I shared with you the other day was actually about, like, imagine you're building a house.
Oh yeah.
Do you only insure the house once it's built? Or do you insure it while it's being built too? Because 3/4 of the way into this, somebody kicks over a propane heater and burns the whole thing down.
You should have had insurance.
It wasn't the house that I had right then and there, man. It's like, I'm insuring the whole thing to the point of building the house, of where I'm going, not just a singular point of the journey that I was in.
Yeah.
So I had to decide that the house was worth something to me and worthy
Before
of
it was
insurance.
finished. Yeah.
Before it was finished.
Before it was finished.
So I think a lot of people make the mistake, or I've made the mistake, is, you know, assuming I will get to it at some point in time, and right now it's just some fish and a handful of frags. I don't really need to care about it as much right now as I did once it's end-to-end coral, in which case it's super obvious you should protect the hell out of this thing. But the part of it is, I will never get to the point that it's worthy of protecting if I don't protect the journey on the way there.
If I don't protect my nubbins.
At least the nubbins. At least lower percentage paths.
Next one, hard lesson here is the overactive skimmer. I could say this has happened to me. I mean, yours in particular because of the design of the skimmer and when it overflowed. But an overflowing skimmer not only means dirty poop water coming back into the tank and just recycling, but a lot of times those things just spit, sputter, splash all over, and now you've got dirty, nasty tank poo water all over the walls, all over your floors, all over everywhere, and that's a nasty mess to clean up.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that like you should look out for, and a couple of them you can just fix. I'll give you a tip right now.
Yeah.
If your skimmer out there right now, when it gets full, bobbles all over the place like this, it's because the baffle goes down over the internal baffle, and the bubbles have to like go around it.
Yep.
Drill a little hole in the side of the lid's baffle,
Yep.
and then the air can escape once the thing is full. You won't have that problem. But
There you
when
go.
that's happening, what happens is the foam comes out of the little holes in the top of the lid, and then it's like spraying all over on the outlets, on all of the cords. If you haven't really protected the thing really well from an electrical standard, it is a fire hazard now. And also, like you mentioned, this thing might have 3 weeks of poo collected in the cup, and when it goes insane, all of a sudden it's going to dump all that nutrients immediately.
It's
and
gonna
those nutrients
dilute it.
might rapidly turn into ammonia, by the way, because
Yeah.
of the point at which they're kind of broken down and so easy.
Yeah, it's not just dumping your skimmer cup in there, it's that oh man, that's just weeks worth of scum and mud and nasty stuff in your back in your tank in one shot.
The number one cause of that is unstable water level in the tank. And so the reason for that is in the sump, if the water level goes up, the feed pump doesn't have to work as hard to fill it, and so the water level just rises in the whole thing, and then it just goes all over the place. So there's a couple of times what happens. It's if you don't have an auto top off and you just dump water in there willy-nilly, and like I intentionally dumped 5 gallons too much in there and let it go back down, that will happen. It will also happen anytime you turn off the return pumps or the return pump fails.
Your skimmer.
All of a sudden the water level, the tank drains in there, skimmer's still on, going all over the place. So feed modes you can use to turn the skimmer off for a half hour anytime you turn off anything else, like on your controllers. You can use float switches.
Power strip, the stuff that you want off during a water change or doing whatever is all tied on one strip. So you push one button and everything that you want shuts off.
On the Apex, I usually use a defer statement too, so that even when I turn the return pumps back on, the skimmer doesn't come on for another 10 minutes because still the water level will actually be really high in there.
There's actually Auto Aqua makes that a little sensor or what have you when the skimmer cup gets full, that and you plug the skimmer pump into this little brick into the wall, and it has a built-in delay on it too. So if my return pump failed but my skimmer kept going, the skimmer cup would fill up immediately, but as soon as it hit that sensor, it would shut off and it wouldn't turn back on until the sensor was clear. And once the sensor was clear, it would still take like 5 minutes.
The Octopus Regal actually has that too. They have a little float switch that fits inside the cup. When it's full, it just turns off. But you can also pull that thing out and you can just actually put it in your sump too. And so if the sump water level ever gets below, it'll just turn the skimmer off. So having that kind of built into it is actually nice too. This one we mentioned a minute ago. Hard lessons we'd like to avoid in the future. Assuming you will remember to turn something back on. The first mistake I can think of that I made 4 times before I bought this $12 thing to stop it is assuming I'll remember to turn off my RODI system.
Oh gosh.
I'm gonna fill up this 50-gallon tub or 30-gallon tub, and at some point in time I'm like, for some reason, Mr. Spacey here is going to remember to go back down there in 4 hours and turn this off.
Like, oh yeah, I'll be back down. Oh yeah, don't worry about it.
Somebody's going to invite me to get some ice cream. Somebody's
I'm
going to
gonna get on
in
a
my backyard.
heavy hand of Candy Crush.
Oh yeah, dude. What if they gave me like one of those free hours or something with extra, donuts? So anything can come up in your life where, bam.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you. I think I probably flooded the floor with dozens of gallons of water 4 or 5 times before I decided, you know what, I actually maybe need that $12 float valve. Like,
But it goes.
Why? Why did I have to go through that?
It goes with a lot of things, and that's why we now, like Dave will put his keys on things that we adjust. We put, I set a $50 bill on the dose, and I guess it wasn't an incentive enough because I still forgot it. And Dave brought it back to the office, but having something like that's having it do it for having something that does it for you is just planning for redundancy to beat all ends. Like I know that when I push this button or when I do this task, I can walk away and forget, and it's okay because the controller or what have you is going to automatically do that for me. It's going to remember for me. If I don't have that ability, then something valuable, something that reminds me, because I get the same place. I'll come in here and I'll be filling up the brute trash can with water, and I'll be like, let me just go walk out really quick and get a marker or something like that. And when you come back in, 10 minutes later, water everywhere.
Or I could walk by, you're going to get a marker, I'll come grab you and like, hey, dude, I need you to do something.
Yeah.
And then done. And like 2-3 hours later, water.
Oh, water. And then it's always a heart racing event when you remember that. Like,
you did actually, I didn't tell you
water.
about it. I don't know if you remember this, but like 2 days ago or 3 days ago, you turned on the lights on the 360 in my office.
I did. I walked away.
And then you locked away and never turned it on. And I knew when you did it, I'm like, dude, when you turn that toggle, that he's not going to turn it back off. They were already off, and he manually turned them on.
It was past 5 o'clock, and somebody came in the office and was like, "Oh, this tank looks really great." And I was like, "Oh yeah, let's turn the lights on and take a look at it." Never turned it. I walked away.
The reality is I might not have noticed too if I didn't remember that night that you did this. Of all things, I would never remember. But I was like, I bet she didn't turn that thing off, and I went and looked. And if I hadn't, those lights could have been stuck on for days before I actually figured it out.
When you get in the office, they're on. When you leave, usually they're still on or on their way out, and you just would never notice it. And that's why I mean,
we haven't set up the alarms on the lights yet.
No.
The apex, we cleared the apex. We moved it here because all the cords are going to different places. We haven't set up some of those things yet.
But you could be smarter about it, especially if you have an aquarium controller, and you want to do something like that. Go through the task of, I should have just programmed it before instead of just turning on the outlets. Just a quick little 10 minute, hey, push this, and then after 10 minutes it'll automatically shut off.
Yeah, feed mode, like a maintenance mode, whatever. We walk up and push feed mode A, and because how many of you periodically just want to turn the lights on when they have to appreciate the tank or show it to your friends or your family? All the time.
Yeah.
How often do you forget to turn it off? Some of the time.
A lot of the
time.
time.
And so if you just can push it on, it turns on for an hour, and then you walk away and know that it's going to turn off on your own. Way higher percentage path to success.
Higher percentage path.
All right, next one.
Building a fire hazard, water, mist, and alarm. So this is the hard lesson here is come to the realization that this thing back here with all of its electricity and water is the only space that I can think of in life where that much electricity and water put next to each other is okay.
Yeah, and highly conductive salt water.
Yeah, you're building a fire hazard by setting up one of these tanks. So there's things that you should put in place to not just save the tank, but we're talking like the bigger picture, the home, the family.
Yeah, so in the terms of planning a safer tank with redundancy, it means not having power bars that are just sitting on the ground and essentially little cord freeways of water that go right into them. Yeah. Like the skimmer goes nuts, follows the cord, goes all the way down, sets the place on fire. And so don't build a fire hazard. And in terms of fire hazard, you can talk about drip loops, you can talk about water doesn't travel up for the most part, you can talk about a lot of different things. But if you just go and look at it and you say, yep, that looks like a fire hazard, then just fix it. And then outside of that, if you're not going to fix it, and you're like, you know what, not worth it, I'm going to chance it, I'm going to roll the dice. I understand this is a lower trajectory for both the tank and my family and my house and every possible thing, but I'm going to do it anyway. Well, then go buy a fire alarm. They're $30 and install it inside of the sump area, so at least you know immediately if that ever happened.
Yeah.
Better bonus points if it's like a Nest that actually sends that fire alarm to your phone and lets you know to go do something about it, so you can actually call. Maybe Maybe the thing is your family's outside, like somebody can just go and put the damn thing out. It's because it's probably going to be a smoldering fire to begin with.
Yeah. Well, and then for your 360, we found that we have a hobbyist who actually services our fire extinguishers here, and he was he the one that led you onto the water mist extinguisher?
Yeah, we were looking at all kinds of them.
It's like RO water in a fire extinguisher, which is rated for like electrical fires and whatnot. But for the sake of the tank, this is something that you can spray in or around the area and not be as concerned with like chemicals going into your tank. Like, who knows what's in the other fire extinguishers and how that's going to affect your tank. But one of these like water mist fire extinguishers, like if you have a fire, higher percentage pass.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of different types. I'm going to butcher it a little bit, but there's like a powder one. Well, that will put out the fire, but it also probably kill the tank, right? Yep. You're going to spray all whatever that powder is in the fire extinguisher. So, but better than not.
Better than your house.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd rather kill the tank than let my house just burn to the ground with the tank with it. So I'm going to have to put it out. There's also like foam ones, same problem. There's also, I think, CO2 ones that spray out CO2 that suffocate the thing. The water mist one is actually deionized water that comes out in a spray.
We're all familiar with that.
Yeah, well, deionized water isn't conductive, and so we can spray the deionized water on the electrical fire, and it will put it out, and it also won't add all those contaminants into your sump or tank. So fire out, tank not dead.
Win-win.
Yeah. So it's not a bad idea to have a water mist fire extinguisher around, or even a fire alarm, because no matter how you cut this, there's 12 to 20 cords underneath this thing. Yeah. And even if you did it perfect one day, you might pull a couple of things out and not do it perfect the other day.
Yeah.
And like, this is the piece that somebody said to me once is, if you have a power bar sitting on the ground, really it is just a cord water freeway. If you're thinking to have this, don't wait, not a single day. Don't say, I'm going to get to this someday in the future. Go home today and fix that, because that is the worst possible thing, which is the power bar sitting on the ground, cord freeway, water freeway in there. Just go mount the thing up, and you'll eventually just kind of create drip loops where that doesn't happen.
It already looks ugly on the ground. Make it look ugly and safe. Put it up.
Like there's perfect, and there's just not the worst way. So just don't do the worst one, and you're better off than you were today. I mean, all you got to do is put 2 screws in and move it up. Go ahead.
That's funny. Another hard lesson learned here is waiting until it breaks is not the cheapest or the most efficient method. I don't know. There's something it feels so wrong about getting rid of something before it's completely dead. It's electronics or whatever. I've got a clock radio in my garage, and man, I'm not going to throw that thing away until it just absolutely stops pumping out the tunes. But that's a hard mentality to grasp around, for a lot of reefers around their equipment.
I won't replace a microwave before it breaks.
Yeah.
I won't replace. I can live without a microwave for a while. My washer, I can live without. I can live without a lot of stuff. But life support, I don't want to wait until it breaks. I think about this in terms of like, what if we had you on a ventilator? Do we want to wait till the ventilator no longer works, or is there a usable lifespan of the ventilator that we should repair it or dump it?
Like, it's getting on that 6 months. It's still pumping, but we should probably replace it.
This thing's got 10,000 hours on it.
Randy's life depends on it.
Yeah, at 10,000 hours, and 80% of the time they fail after 10,000. Well, we don't have to wait for that last 20, man. It's actually, and when you think about it, you're thinking you're saving money, but putting the whole tank at risk is not saving money.
No.
It's the wrong mentality. It does not materialize that way. No. And most specifically, I think of as the heater.
Yes.
Heater turns on and off 30 times or a million times a year. Costs $35. Do I really need to get that last 6 months out of the heater? Like, I'm going to essentially save myself $5.
Yeah.
And I'm waiting and hoping that I'm going to be there the moment that it breaks, or I'm going to put in
Check
$1,000 worth of redundancy to catch my $35 heater when it breaks.
Neither of those are the most cost-effective way. They're not cheap.
And replacing it before it breaks isn't the end-all solution. But if I were to take my heater and just throw it away at the end of the year, after it's turned on and off a million times a year, it's a way higher percentage, and it's also affordable, by the way, because it's $35.
Yeah.
In terms of reefing, $35 might as well be free. In terms of the types of stuff that you have in the tank that you're protecting, it might as well be free. All right?
Man.
So waiting until it breaks is not the cheapest and not the most efficient method, and it isn't just relation to replacing your heater. I don't need to wait until the return pump or the flow pumps are clogged and don't turn at all.
Yeah.
I don't have to wait till the moment like it literally does not work anymore.
I think we mean the analogy of the car. Like I don't need to wait until my oil is so sludgy or gone that the engine seizes before I change it. Like there is a maintenance to this thing. There's like at least once a quarter, pull that thing out and clean it at very least twice a year.
Okay, is there anybody you guys know that never changes their oil ever and their path is just hope it doesn't break?
Well, I'll get through another 6 months.
That is a low percentage outcome.
Extremely low.
It's the same thing. So in this case, we actually have alarms, when you do the power monitoring on your power heads and your return pumps, they actually tell you, hey, I need maintenance. Because they start using less and less power.
Yeah, and it works like a champ. I actually just put my gyres on the Apex with power monitoring in my office. And already, first few days, I got a baseline wattage. Here I am like a month or so in with the gyre pumps, and they've already lost like 15% of the power draw that they had before. And I'm looking at them and they're visually getting dirty. Now, at this point, if I was only following visually, I'm looking at them like, it's not time to clean those yet. But watching the power draw, I'm like, oh, that's 15% less power. That's 15% less flow.
But maybe more.
Yeah. But using tools like that really solves this issue.
It doesn't have to be hard either. So you can just get a bucket and throw some citric acid in it. We sell it in bulk. Throw some citric acid in there and just throw your gyre in there and let it run for a half hour, and it will probably have cleaned itself automatically and just put it back in the tank. It's that simple. In my return pump, I can just put it into the bucket and let it run. I don't necessarily have to totally disassemble it.
No.
You could. It's probably best practice. But if you're not going to do best practice, second best practice is actually just clean it sometimes.
Second best practice.
better than nothing.
Follow second best practice.
Okay. All right. So what's next?
Next, we have episode 5 of the 52 Weeks of Reefing. If you haven't caught on yet, we're going through episode by episode. And this episode 5 was called Plumbing Overflows and Return Pumps. And we have a core belief, some what we believe that matters, and some hard lessons learned that we want to share with you about plumbing overflows and return pumps, starting with the core belief.
Core belief in relation to plumbing overflows and return pumps is the return pump and plumbing are the heart and circulatory system of the tank. The best option will be leak-proof, kink-proof, failure-resistant method of connecting the life support to the tank. So this is the circulatory system. It should be leak-proof, kink-proof, a failure-resistant method of connecting the life support to the tank. That's what best looks like.
So, and everything we're talking about with what we believe matters and hard lessons learned revolve around that core belief, starting with the overflow. Overflow gurgle and return pump hum detracts from the tank. Use a bean animal and use a DC solution.
Yeah, so that electric hum that comes from, your like old Mag drives of the world.
Man, I had a Mag 12 on my 125. Constantly. And I've actually, sometimes they can echo so loud that down in the basement, they're reverberating through the stand, through the floor, and even amplified in different rooms.
It takes away from the beauty of the tank.
This is not powerful. Question. This is not beautiful.
Okay, and the gurgle of a, what do they call those, Dursos?
I have
little bubbles going in there.
So hard to tune in, and a little salt creep gets stuck in your little air valve or whatever, and it's back to the start all over again. The sound of falling, rushing water, not only makes you want to go to the bathroom when you're sitting there all day long, but it's just, it detracts from the entire thing. Like, now I know that there's an aquarium there, but if I didn't hear that sound, sometimes I look over and like, oh, yeah, look at that.
I don't mind the sound of moving water.
A little bit?
I don't like gurgling.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, those are different things.
Toilet bowls suck.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so in that spirit, the bean animal, which is three, a primary one, which is just a full siphon.
Yep.
If that one isn't tuned perfect, the next one will take just a little bit of the water.
Yep.
And then there is an
secondary
emergency one. In that case, that thing is, from an overflow perspective, is like going to be probably leak proof because it's got emergencies. It'll be quiet. It probably won't kink. A failure resistant method.
Yeah.
That's the bean animal.
Bean animal's the way to go. Yeah. Just the sole fact that I have a primary, a secondary, which is the backup. We were talking redundancy in the last one, and also that emergency. That's the backup to the backup. Mm-hmm. Not only is from a safety standpoint, but yes, for tunability and a little ball valve. Better yet, a DC pump that you can choose different flow rates.
All right. Another thing that we believe matters in terms of plumbing, overflow, and return pumps. Overflows in the tank, like an overflow tower inside the tank, is bad for flow and aquascapes. But it does allow you to put it flush to the wall. We talked about that earlier.
Yep.
But I will avoid these at all costs inside the tank because I really want to create flow behind the aquascape, not just in front of it. And it's really, really hard to do once you put those overflow towers inside.
I mean, this is a lesson in flow that we learned from WWC, and we tried to apply on the 750 XXL and found it's really hard to apply that with the overflow tower inside the actual tank. You need more pumps or power heads to eliminate dead spots because that thing is in the middle of the dang tank.
Mm-hmm. True. All right, another one here, what we believe is matter, is PVC when you can.
Yep.
Because that's the nature of leak-proof, kink-proof, failure-resistant method of connecting the circulatory system. Hybrid when you can't, meaning let's have hard connections on it. Like I'm gonna put elbows. I'm gonna hard secure it to the sump area with a hard connection. I may even use like a T, a barbed T, so that like I'm not bending the tubing too much. I'm just giving it a nice angle that will send it out the direction or Y. So hybrid when you can't, and you got to use soft tubing, and so be it.
Don't just put the end of your soft tubing on the end of your return pump and then snake that thing all the way up to the back of your return line or back of your return. That's not kink proof. That's not failure resistant. That's not leak proof.
Yeah, and if you use soft tubing, probably use a size bigger than you think that you actually need because it will kink at some point in time for some reason or another. And go with the natural arc. So the stuff is kind of rounded from the tube that it's been on.
Yeah, don't fight the arc to make that corner.
If you need to, get a PVC like barbed elbow or 45 or T or whatever, rather than trying to like make it go 90 degrees because you're just going to kink it.
Yeah, it's not good. We also believe that matters, this is a really good one, DC pumps tune better than your gate valve. And I mean, especially there's pumps out there that have so many multiple layers of changing of flow rates. When the Neptune Core speaks out to me because there's like 16 different steps up and down, meaning that I can change just the minute little bit of flow. Unlike some pumps that have DC pumps that may have like 5 steps. Well, one of those will get me close, and then I'll have to use the ball valve. But if you choose the right DC pump, you can almost eliminate the need for that ball valve. Just because you can pick the flow rate.
Yeah, so I think of the Varios actually. It was used to be one of my favorites. It's 5 a little bit older design at this point, right? It's only got 5 speeds, and that means for the most part I'm probably going to still be stuck trying to monkey with that valve.
Yep.
and then, like, you don't really know how much you've done. You got to wait 10 minutes to figure it out. Instead, if I just go up and, like, have it go 1 of 16 steps faster. I think the Vectra has a lot of different stops as well. So from Ecotech.
Yeah, you could actually use some of those pumps in their apps and get more steps than what you actually get from push button.
That's actually kind of goes down to a reliable return pump too. Is like I always really liked the fact that the Varios had the little float switch in it, so if it ever got too dry, it would just turn off so it doesn't spin and burn out. But the new generation of pumps like the Vectra and the Core and the Seche SDC, they just turn off.
They recognize that the water levels is spinning faster than normal.
In fact, like the Core, if you have an Apex, it will actually tell you what's going on. It has like 5 or 6 different alarms of not just that the pump is failing, but why it's failing, what's happening to it. Is there's a voltage issue, it's a water level issue. I forget what all the actual alarms are, but when the alarm goes off, it will actually tell you the specific thing that is wrong with it, and so you can go fix it. So
DC tunes better.
DC definitely tunes better. I can tell you I'll never go back now. I don't want to monkey. I don't want to crawl underneath there and spin that valve. I forget which way
forget which way is open. You forget which way is closed, and then you can only make the slightest little thing, and then you have to sit there and listen and listen and wait, and then go, no, it wasn't it, and turn.
Or walk up, one button, boom, done. Move on with life.
So much nicer.
Yep. Okay. All right. So a
theme here,
man. You're hearing this over and over and over again. Leak-proof, kink-proof, failure-resistant method for the circulatory system, dual returns.
Again, I mean, it's the third time we've said it here in 3 different sections now.
And this is one of those easy things, like even if you haven't done this in the past and it's like you already have your system up and running, most of the time you have 2 returns or 2 return holes on there, and you can just kind of cut one off and cap it or whatever and put another return pump. And like even if you just need to do it quick and dirty, like one of those can actually be soft tubing. It doesn't have to be hard because you have the other one hard. Or even then, and this is actually a good point, is if you do use soft tubing, then having 2 is probably even better because of the kink issue. Right?
Absolutely. Plumbing, overflows, and return pumps. What we believe matters is this is going to ruffle some feathers, I believe, but we do believe it matters. 1 times turnover rate. 1 times at a minimum. I don't know how many times that I got told that 10 times turnover. And actually, as a customer service agent, before we started going down this path like years ago, I'd tell people so size and return pumps for me, and I'm like, here's how many gallons you have in the system. We typically aim for around 10 times turnover. Here's the size pump that you should get. Well, a lot of times it turns out to be a big, expensive pump to get 10 times turnover. Super loud and everything too. When actually at a minimum 1 times turnover. Here's one of the easy ways to measure it is if the speed of your pump and the turnover from the display down into the sump and back to the display is enough to keep your display water like 78 degrees, that's enough.
Probably enough.
That's probably enough.
I mean, the only thing we're really trying to do is filter the water down there and heat it. And so, yes, the more times you turn it over, the better the filter socks, the fleece, probably the skimmer will work. There is a point to diminishing return because you got to remember, even at 1 times, it's got 24 passes a day at this.
Once an hour, the entire body of water.
Yeah, so at 3 times, it's got 75 passes every single day, over the month, man, it's so many times. So, like, it doesn't have to be. And yes, it does get better the more you go up, but not only will the pumps be more expensive, especially if you're running duals, but the pumps themselves tend to be louder, and all that water gurgling through the system is definitely a lot louder as it's rushing through, man. I got 2,000 gallons an hour flowing through this thing.
Well, a lot of times, I'll put it this way. 10 times turnover for some systems is too much for your 1-inch bulkheads to handle. A 1-inch bulkhead is only rated for like 660 gallons per hour, something like that. how many people have 1-inch bulkheads on your tank? Because it's very common, very common. So you're talking like 10 times turnover might be more than 600 gallons per hour or 660 gallons per hour. In which case, you're maxing that thing out. No wonder it has sound issues.
All right, another one here that I believe matters for plumbing overflow and return pumps is when they're clean, they take the most power. When they're dirty, we already mentioned this a little bit, but there's a couple of ways to know this. So when you don't have to wait to like just look at it, decide when it's time to maintenance your return pump.
Yeah.
You can actually just monitor the amount of power that it's consuming.
Yeah.
And if it used to take 60 watts and it's now taking 45, that means it's probably getting gummed up and requires maintenance. And one of those ways is if you have a fancy controller like an Apex, you can have the power monitoring. Not only could you just go check it, but an alarm will actually go off and tell you, hey, it's time to clean this pump, it's taking less power. But you can also get something like a kilowatt.
Yeah, the kilowatt strip or even just the single kilowatt plug, it has like amperage and wattage draw monitor, or not monitoring, but at least it displays it for you. And I can walk by and I can look at the screen and go, oh man, it's pulling 15 less watts.
So, and like sometimes, dude, it's supposed to be pulling 30 watts and it's actually pulling 6. Like the Tunes pump that you have, man, is barely doing anything.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
Okay, so the little kilowatt, all it is a little thing. It plugs in the wall. You plug the cord in. It has a little display and tells you how much wattage is taken. I think it costs $30.
Easy money.
Not only can you put it on the thing you care about most, just in general, being your return pump, but you can plug anything into it temporarily. Like it's maintenance day once a quarter.
Yeah, take your little kilowatt around, plug your each of your pumps into it, and find out what the wattage draw is, and be like, oh, last week they were at 50 watts, and this week they're at 25. That's 50% power loss. Probably time to clean them.
And like those little tips, man, are like instead of just wasting my time cleaning it all the time, like these are indications that it needs to be cleaned, not just a random waste of time.
Yeah.
Or worse, avoiding it when it actually did need to be cleaned. All right, so hard lessons in terms of plumbing, overflows, and return pumps that we would like to avoid.
We're talking higher paths to success, and we're sharing our hard lessons so you can be on that higher path. One of the things is assuming that barbed fittings or barbs can be removed easily. And I fell into this trap before. I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna plumb this thing together, and when it comes time to disassemble it or maintenance it, I just gotta pull that tube right off of the barbed fitting and I'm good to go. Good luck trying to get that thing off.
Yeah, so barbed does not make it like necessarily replaceable or modular or anything.
I've so many times had to take the razor blade to cut that piece of tubing off of the barb to get it off.
And you have to be really careful not to nick the barbs because now you'll create leak points too.
Exactly.
With the razor blade.
Yeah. Barbs are not easily removed.
Yeah, and don't for a moment also not use the ratchet clamps on the barb fittings because today it might not leak, but as the tubing gets harder and more rigid over time, it will tend to create a leak that wasn't there today. And sometimes you won't notice it because it's probably going to be a drip until one day you go back there and it looks like stalactites and stalagmites of silt creep have hit each other from like the crystal cave back there.
Yeah.
And so think about that in its entirety.
Another hard lesson is we actually see this in our water change lines also. Clear lines grow gunk. They're just ambient light everywhere. Unless they're ran through some completely dark area, you see it on soft tubing that has a refugium. And you're not on you. I mean, you see it in a refugium where not only your refugium chamber, but the side of your skimmer body is growing gunk. And then this chamber over here is growing gunk because it has a line to the refugium. You can just picture that inside your plumbing lines and your tubing lines, like clear plastic, when it comes to like braided nylon type tubing, it's gonna grow gunk.
Yeah, you know what? I always call it braided nylon. I forget what it's actually really called. It's not nylon. It's polyethylene or something. I forget, but it's braided somewhere in there. But I call it that all the time.
We all
build my DNA. The problem though is that braided nylon, I'm calling it now, is the best for not kinking. Black, but you can see through it, and it will grow stuff in it eventually. So try to keep it dark.
Black silicone though.
the black, there's that black tubing that we sell that won't grow anything, but it's thinner and it kinks easier.
It kinks easy, yeah. So there's a double-edged sword there.
Again, the thicker the tube, the more you oversize it, the harder it is to kink. So if I were to do this again, I would probably use the black stuff, and I would probably use barbed elbows and stuff to make sure I'm using as straight a runs as I can and prevent the kinks over time.
Yeah.
But clear will grow algae, it'll grow cyano, it'll grow all kinds of stuff.
Even if you don't have the refugium, like I said in that example, just the ambient light of your room will grow gunk.
Yeah, and if it grew some turf algae and then it just broke off and clogged your valve,
done.
Problem.
Yeah. Easy. That leads to speaking of soft tubing, one of the hard lessons we like to avoid in the future, soft tubing kinks and changes shape over time.
It's anything that's got a little bit of pressure like this, well, it's really solid today, but it just, over time, the pressure just pushes on it. So, there's some things you can do, like you can use the ratchet clamps at different points to kind of like smush it straight and doesn't allow it to kink. There's various things to do, but just because it's not kinking today, the soft tubing, doesn't mean that it won't. And like, we've all plumbed a lot of soft tubing tanks, so I don't want to like paint it as a picture that you can't be done. But all this stuff should definitely be thought about because it will create a higher percentage path to success for sure.
We said that. That's kind of the running theme throughout this whole thing. Most successful reefers have that plan for the inevitable failure in the future.
I'm going to share this one here. Hard lessons to avoid in the future. Avoid elaborate manifolds. Right?
We have one on this tank right here.
That never gets used.
This 160. We've never used it.
Okay,
well, we used it once for recirculating skimmer feed, and now we don't.
Yeah, sometimes people use them, but here's the thing: is like, it's actually really hard to get the right flow rate out of a manifold, and like, if you design it wrong, you won't get it at first. But like, if I had a pipe going here and there was an out on this end and four going down, the way it works is water pressure actually just shoots out that way, and very little of it will come down out the little port. So you have to be able to create equidistant pressure and back pressure to get it to work the way that you want. And before you know it, like,
it's so elaborate.
Well, what's if I want to run, so I got one return pump and I want to run my carbon reactor off of it because I don't want to buy another pump, I'm going to buy more plumbing fittings and valves than the cost of a little C-Shade $30 pump.
100%.
Yeah, and the little $30 pump is so much easier to maintain. I guess it's one less cord, and it looks way cooler, no question.
Function. Remember what we said back in the sump, the sump section when we were talking about it. Function over form.
So I would think, do a manifold if you have a very distinct purpose for it and you've thought it out and said, this is the best solution for me. But don't build a manifold and spend all that money on valves and pumps and pipes and all the other stuff just because it looks cool per se, because you will probably never use it for its intended use.
True. We don't.
There are definitely a lot of uses for it. What I'm getting at is know your use and build to that.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Another hard lesson here is, this is, we kind of talked about it already, but hard lesson to avoid in the future is waiting for the return pump to literally stop working before maintenance. That's a low percentage path.
Low path.
I'm going to hit this one too.
All right, yeah.
Hard lessons we'd like to avoid in the future. Lazy PVC gluing has related results.
And this isn't there's multiple ways to be lazy about your PVC gluing. For some people, they swear by, I don't use the primer before I just go glue. And it's such a low pressure system, it doesn't matter. And probably one of the biggest culprits that I didn't even, consider until, talking to you about it and plumbing and, actually listening to 52 Weeks of Reefing, is that the burrs left over when you're cutting pipe, especially if you use like a saw or something like that, or even a hacksaw or whatever to cut the pipe, it leaves such a rough cut in those little burrs if you don't, what do you call that, the tool that?
deburr,
or
piece of
deburr, sandpaper, or anything like that. They actually have tools for it. But those little burrs, as you put the pipe together, grind into the other piece, leaving a leak point.
I'm one of my big FragTech systems, the first ones, I had to replumb it 3 times because it developed a leak at various points right away, and I was just gluing, doing it sloppy. And then I stopped doing it that way, and now I follow all the rules. I do the primer. We can debate the primer, how much is needed. I don't know. I have never had a problem since I started using it right. I use the primer. I cut the pipe straight. I deburr it with a piece of sandpaper. It doesn't produce all those little grooves in it. I smush it or put a healthy amount of glue on both the pipe as well as the valve. Make sure that, or fitting, make sure that the glue doesn't get too far into the valve or hit anything. Push it all the way in, give it a quarter turn, and hold. So, because it wants to like swell out and spit it out. Just turn it and hold. If I do that on every one of those joints, I've never developed a leak, and I've done
those are your results.
I don't even know how many thousands of times now. The lazy way doesn't mean that it won't work, because it does. Just lower percentage path. And here's the piece of it is, do you value your time or your money more? Because if you value your time, just whip it all together. If you value your money more and you don't want $500 worth of plumbing going in the trash and having to start over again, well, take the extra little bit of time. It doesn't take that much just to take the burrs off. It's not that using the primer isn't that much harder. And the primer one I'm a little on the fence about because I read studies both ways. But the part about it is that on the studies, in terms of leaks, they're always putting it under like 80 PSI.
Tons of pressure.
And we don't do that here.
There's not that much pressure.
So it's kind of a moot point. I just part of my method that I do, and it always has. But end of the story, lazy PVC gluing has related results. Hard lesson. Expensive lesson.
Expensive lesson. Another hard lesson here, and I mean, we've said it, I've heard it all over the place too, but hard lesson, learn from, spend the extra money, unions everywhere. If you think that no, I'm not gonna take that apart, I don't need to union that, no, think again, make it so you can take it apart. Overplan unions, and then, you'll have easy to maintain, easy to take apart stuff.
Here's the part that most people don't get about unions until you actually use them, is when I'm gluing a PVC plumbing together on the sump to the tank, there's all these little angles that you need to get perfect. And the way that people normally do them is they'll put a little mark on the pipe, and put a little mark on the fitting, and then when you squish it in, you have about 10 seconds to line it up perfect. And if you don't line it up perfect and you get those two things exactly right, well, now the thing is shooting, instead of going straight up, it's kind of shooting out, it's kind of shooting in.
Putting pressure on the other joints of the whole plumbing job.
If it's not straight, then it's putting pressure on the bulkhead or the attachment onto the sump as well. However, instead of having just that 90 on it, if I put a union here, I can loosen it up, and now this thing just swivels any way direction I want. I don't have to care at all about how I get it, the angle. So the more unions you have and the more true union ball valves you have, the easier it is, for a newer person to set this up without having to redo it and get one of those things wrong and then 100%. Put, pressure and compression that creates leaks or even snaps, like those less expensive black bulkheads. Are really kind of like what I call hobby grade. They're not really designed to hold a lot of pressure.
Oh, the ABS?
Yeah, the ABS ones. They look slick, and that's why we all use them. They're low profile, but they should not have a lot of pressure on them.
I think another good thing about unions too is we talked about in this earlier on in sumps. We talked about moving a sump or changing plumbing and stuff like that. Easier to tackle, I think, with unions. Like, I can measure the length of the pipe that I have there, get the same unions, and refit, recut, redo whatever. But the best part is like, when I choose to do something like that, I can take it all apart, and now everything's mobile, everything's modular, everything can come apart quick, easy, and back together. If I wanted to take my entire sump out to maintain my entire sump, couple unions, pull that whole thing out. Oh, guess what? My sump broke. I'm gonna get the exact same one. Okay, put it all back. Everything fits. Yeah.
There you go. That's
Unions.
the reason.
Unions.
All right, I would say what's next, but it's going to be episode 6, and that is going to be noon tomorrow.
100%.
It's 11 days of reefing, each one of these coming all the way through the next week or so. One day after another, you get to chime in for this conversation.
Hey, go watch the 52 Weeks of Reefing episodes that we just covered. They're down there in the description of the video. You can go check them out and revisit the past. See how it jives with the stuff we said today.
We'll see you tomorrow with episode 6 plus a few more.